time? Is everything set? We could wait, I'm just wondering. Okay, you let me know when he's ready. Okay.
Paul's gonna join in. I'm gonna make you a list of the Zoom so you can help.
Okay. No, it's somebody's phone.
Okay.
I never received the email, but maybe you can just read it just the same. Oh, you did? Oh, does it say Stacy? Yeah. Okay.
I'll read it to the rest.
Almost there.
That's okay.
I'm in.
I think there's somebody's phone timer going off. Did y'all hear that? No?
It's gone.
It sounds like it's.
I didn't bring my phone, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's not my ringtone.
It's fine.
I left mine at home. Figured there should be no.
Don't worry, we
reason
found
I
them.
needed it, so I just left it.
That unplugged sometime.
Right?
Once they know, it's not too soon. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll have a roll call.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Tracy Quick,
Here?
Dylan Mojica,
Present.
Jen Shumway,
Here.
Mary Lowry,
Here.
Odie Cruden,
Here.
Justin Acevedo,
Here.
Capricorn. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the first item of business. We want to recognition of the retirement of Commissioner Bill Lister from the Planning and Zoning Commission with 6 years of service.
Yes, Madam Chair, Bill Easter started serving the city of Wilkes through the Planning and Zoning Commission in January 2016. He served past his term just because of the need of the city, and we just appreciate Bill. He wanted to be here tonight, however, he's unable to, so I have his nameplate that I'll get to him this week, but he wanted to just thank you all and wish you all well.
Thank you, Shelley. What was the term?
It's a 4-year term that he served past that, so I think he does 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. He served almost 7 years, so.
Wonderful. All right, the next thing we'll have on our list is administration of the loyalty oath to the new appointed commissioners, Justin Ozivito, Mary Lowry, and Tracy Quick.
Yes, and Madam Chair, I'd like to table Justin's tonight because I would like for him to be here just so that he can participate a little bit more.
Okay, acknowledged. We will chair Justin.
Is that okay, Justin? We'll put you on the next agenda to be in person?
Yes, I wouldn't be joining technically until our next session.
He's active.
You've been appointed by council and approved.
Gotcha.
You're able to, this is just a.
So it's just the oath. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that in our next session.
Tracy and Mary, would you like to stand? Raise your right hand. And if you'd repeat after me, okay, I state your name,
I, Tracy Quick,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and defend them against all enemies,
and defend them against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of the Planning and Zoning Commission
the duties of the Planning and Zoning Commission
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the December 1st meeting minutes as printed by Shelley on the front of this packet. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second to approve the minutes?
I second to approve.
Okay, thank you. We will take it to a vote. And now we'll vote to approve the minutes.
I approve the minutes.
I approve.
I approve.
I approve.
I approve.
All right, the minutes have been approved. Thank you, Shelley.
Okay, Madam Chair, those, were those, the December 1st minutes?
December 1st minutes
Okay, and we also have the
and the consideration for the January 5th meeting minutes. We need a motion to approve them.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the January 5th, 2022 minutes.
Thank you. A second?
I second that.
Thank you. We'll take it to a vote to approve the minutes.
I approve the minutes.
I approve.
And approve.
I approve.
I approve.
Okay, all in favor to approving the minutes for January 1st, 2022. Now we'll have the presentation and discussion from staff on the group homes and short-term rental policies in Arizona.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to maybe move that agenda item towards the end of the agenda and go ahead and move to item F.
Alrighty.
For the sake of the visiting
Public hearing and consideration of rezoning, case number Z-21-05, a request to rezone the property located on 450 South Hill Street, known as Hill Street School, to apply a planned area development overlay zoning district to the existing underlying C3 Central Commercial District on a total of less than 1 acres of land, 0.79. The pad proposes a maximum of 70 residential dwelling units, no on-site parking requirements, and reduces the minimum required front street building setbacks.
That's it. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Commissioners, welcome. Very excited to have this item before you this evening. As the agenda item read, this will include a public hearing. So after my initial presentation, introduction for to the applicant, then a little question and answer of staff, and then if you're comfortable to open up the public hearing at that time to hear from the public,
Yes.
that would be the order. And then once the public has completed their input, then we close the public hearing and go on with your discussion. So that said, as you mentioned, this is a planned area development rezoning. So what that means is that this property that we're looking at here, this triangular shaped, it's about less than 35,000 square feet, known as the Hill Street School property, is currently zoned in the red, which is C3, our most intense commercial zoning district. That's a central commercial zoning designation. And as you can see, all the properties to the west of that are also zoned C3, meaning that the city has an anticipation that that will be a heavier commercial activity, if not today, in the future, unless something changes in our policies. R2, directly to the north, is in the brown color, and that's a multifamily zoning district. And that's our only multifamily zoning district, by the way. And then you see to the east of this site, NS, which is Neighborhood Services. That's a transitional zoning district between that C2 and the C3. C3 is the lighter red color, or pink, I guess, in this image. And S is intended to be a transition between commercial to residential, and it offers some small, lower intensity retail, goods and services type of activity, offices, things like that. Less intense than the C3 as we're transitioning to create a better buffer for residences. And then you see the TR on the bottom of your screen, and I think you almost have every zoning district we have on this one map, all within this area. Obviously, that intersection of Ash and Hill Street and the access to the downtown is a big area where a lot of different uses are converging here. So TR is a transitional residential district. That's also a transitional district between a more intense commercial to a residential zoning designation. So just want to get you oriented with our existing zoning district surrounding this property. What this request does is to apply a planned area development, or a PAD, as they call them, an overlay over the existing underlying C3 zoning designation to allow very unique things. It's a custom zoning district, if you will, for a unique situation, and that's what they're reserved for. If you look in your zoning ordinance, you would read what PADs are intended for, but it's to allow for unique, creative, and just things that don't fit into any other category. So take a look at that when you have some time. So what that would do is, what that PAD does, and you have a copy in your packet, really the meat of that narrative that's included is that they're wanting residential by right. Currently in C3 zoning districts, you're allowed residential, multifamily residential, not single-family homes, multifamily residential with an approved conditional use permit, which this commission has approved in the past couple of years. I've seen a couple of those. Unfortunately, actually you've approved two that I can recall in the last year and a half maybe, and neither of those have taken off or been converted from commercial to residential, just letting you know. So anyway, the applicant in this situation would like hard zoning, which that PAD would give him, allowing residential by right instead of under a conditional use permit, which can have an expiration, and it's a less permanent option. So they're asking for this PAD for that as well. They're proposing reduced building setback on Maple Street and Hill Street with the proposed new building. And then the existing Hill Street school actually sits right on the property line of Devereaux. So that said, that similar setback, it would be termed a legal non-conforming use today, or building, because it's encroaching into the required setback on that street side as we have today. But through this PAD, it will basically recognize it as a legal use at that point, or a legal building location, because we have a zero lot line, or this PAD would approve the buildings as they're drawn on their site plan. So hopefully that's clear. That's a lot of info. Just to give you a heads up, this is a historic structure. It's an historic area of the community. A lot of houses and other buildings between there and downtown here are in a similar situation where they don't comply with the setbacks that are within them. So just giving you that note. And then the other requirement, the third purpose of this PAD is to request no on-site parking. This proposal strictly relies upon improvements to the on-street parking surrounding the property, or that would be public parking for the property. It is proposed for a senior housing development senior affordable housing development. And that age limitation, as I understand it, is 55 years and up. Just to get you oriented around that site, because it's senior living and they're requesting the alleviation of any on-site parking requirements, we look at, okay, where is this property located? Well, it's close to our downtown. It's here at the gateway to our historic downtown as you would access it from Ash Street on the south. So in our general plan and other documents on our latest downtown plan from 2011 all identify this corner, this particular property, as a key landmark in the city and a gateway to our historic downtown. which is ideally our economic engine and our entertainment sector for the city. At that location, they have access to the Cobra Valley Transit route runs by here, and there is a pickup. Also, you see the Senior Center. The American Legion is across Ash and to the south. Then you have the goods and services along Hill Street, including Nerdburger, churches, the abundance of churches in the area, Safeway, and other shopping, as well as medical offices directly across the street for certain purposes, and then up Ash as well, all ideally within walking distance to the property. And that's one of the key reasons why the applicant's looking at this parcel, and why they also propose to have limited or no parking on site, as it ideally would be in a location that can provide walkable access to your daily goods and services for any residents that would live there. The purpose of the planned area development I just covered, to allow multifamily unit by right with up to 70 dwelling units, and as their narrative explains, they're targeting between 64 to 70. They're requesting to reduce the minimum setbacks on Maple and Hill Street for a new building, and then no on-site parking, as I mentioned. Here's the site plan. We'll start on Devereaux Street on the north. It's currently a dead end. It was blocked off at some point and constructed a garden and some hardscape, and provides access to a house on the north side, as well as to the high school parking lot, or the school parking lots. The applicant is proposing, and you see the property boundary right there on the north side, well, on the, would be the east side. North is to the left of the screen. On the east side of the building, you see the property line. They're proposing to install a new a sidewalk. There is no sidewalk currently. After remodeling that building, install sidewalk, curb gutter, the planter islands to break up the sea of asphalt we have there today, and introduce some screen trees or shade trees to help soften that elevation, and then provide perpendicular parking, and basically reconstruct that detail of Devereaux Street. Should the project move forward, additional information will be provided, and more finite details for what that would look like would be reviewed by the city, and then ultimately come before the Planning and Zoning Commission for site plan approval, or recommendation to City Council for site plan approval. So today's action or a step would be to consider rezoning the property to allow this applicant to move forward with their plans. In financing, as things progress, then they would be required to submit a complete site plan package with the building architecture and details for review, and then bring to Planning and Zoning Commission for review and approval or denial, or consideration, I should say. You see the location of the entrance. So the existing vacant school would be rehabilitated and adapted for residences. And then a new building is proposed to extend off of that north building wall plane, which is generally a blank wall plane without the articulation that the other three sides of the building have. So they propose to simply attach with a corridor to those buildings with an elevator shaft, as well as the main entrance off of Devereaux Street there. So we'd anticipate most of the parking serving this development would be near that entrance. However, obviously, there's probably other entrances that will be developed, but that's the one with the elevator where people like myself would choose to enter. And then you see the proposed building, again, 3 stories to match the existing building height for the most part, along Maple Street. And we'll have a bit of setback. I'm working with the applicant that should that move forward, I'd like to see a little bit of landscape buffer at the base and foundation of that building, and then also try and introduce some tree wells on street. And you see their on-street parking spaces striped there. And then South Hill Street, again, you also see they've identified the parking, parallel parking locations as it would meet our zoning code with the dimensions and so forth, though right now it's not striped or improved in any way. One other item that this applicant is providing is a small reflection seating area to provide some educational opportunity on this historic landmark and on the architecture, and views towards the open space garden there you see in the pocket park with seating, pedestal history plaque and so forth. So there would be some memorial to the history and architecture of the site. Moving on, this is one floor plate, the main level. You can see how they're proposing to create bedrooms, or I'm sorry, apartments within the existing building, and then they have their typical or atypical floor plans on the new proposed building, and then you see another stairwell exit on the south end of the new building. Building elevations. Now, obviously, the colors would be reviewed through the process. The applicant has agreed to process this request in compliance with the the recently adopted Historic District Design Guidelines. What we're looking at here, it generally looks like, you know, it would comply, but we'll take a closer look at the time of site plan approval on how this complies and meets all the goals and objectives and criteria of our design guidelines. So the top being the Hill Street elevation as you're looking from maybe Nerdburger south, the opposite elevation on the bottom of the screen, Devereaux Street. So to the left is the existing building, to the right, past that darker colored, that would be the stairwell and or elevator corridor. In the darker shade, then we have the new construction next to that with the Juliet balconies. And then again, we're looking for maple at the new construction. And again, it's got the two-tone with the Juliet balconies again. And then another Hill Street massing there. So compliance with city goals. You reviewed my staff report. Anytime we receive a zoning request, it is my job and the city's job to make sure that any proposals coming before the city are meeting and furthering the city's adopted long-range plans, like the general plan. That is our #1 guide for the future of the city. It gets readopted every 10 years or amended as needed and so forth, but that is our Bible, basically. It says this is where the City of Globe Council, at one time, it decided is our vision, and that's our marching order. In addition to that, we also have the downtown, more specific plans that have been developed, like the downtown study, Globe Historic Downtown Plan from 2011. Again, that's adopted by council. This is the marching order for what the vision of the downtown is. So my analysis in the staff report goes through all of those goals, strategies, and policies that are established in those that relate to this site or this type of development in the location that those plans discuss. So you have that detail in your staff report, but quickly I'll just let you know it is in compliant with, or this proposal would meet the city's identified need for new and updated housing. Additionally, while I get into the compliance with our existing plans, we do have a draft housing gap study that's being prepared by CAG for the city, analyzing our current state of housing. So we took a look at that. It's a draft format, has not been adopted by council, but you know, there's obviously an amount of work there that's been accomplished into the most current housing data that we have. So we provide that analysis well. So again, this project does further the need for updated, new and updated housing, or more energy efficient housing as well, a need for affordable housing, our need for rehabilitation and repurposing of our historic structures. And this is obviously a significant historic structure or gateway location, so this is probably one of the higher or highest profile type of properties that we have in our historic resources in the city. It also addresses the need for improvements at our downtown gateway, and then the need for residences and population near our downtown. I could say that a development of this density and magnitude wouldn't be appropriate outside of the downtown. Or it'd be a very unique situation where we would want, so with parking or without parking, a 3-story building like that without having a really tough time maintaining the character of the existing residential area. So we want that density and that population near our downtown to serve our downtown, to utilize our businesses, or, support our businesses and services downtown, and limit their requirement or need for an independence or their need for automobile. We want people to walk more, and obviously that leads to healthier outcomes, or bicycle, or utilize our mass transit too. We've got the Cobra Valley transit system that is based on ridership, and the more ridership they have, the more funding they get from federal government. It's a federally funded program. On-street parking is the #1 concern that we've heard from, and understandably so. So in taking a look at on-street parking, the nature of it, obviously there's not an on-street parking today. Maybe in a rare situation, in a peak time on a Saturday night at one of the restaurants or something like that. But, in our experience around that area, there's tends to be a lot of on-street parking available right now. And because this large property is sitting vacant and has for 15 years, properties around that kind of reflect that vacancy across the street. So there isn't not a lot of use or activity as we have in other areas of our downtown. So that said, we recognize there's a problem. There's a number of different ways the city can deal with that in the future. I do caution that we would want to make sure we are fully aware of what a problem is when it occurs, so we don't get ahead of ourselves and try and address a parking problem today that we don't even know what that problem could be, or who it's going to impact, or how it's going to impact them. And there's definitely a number of different ways that you can look for solutions specific to what the symptoms are too. So we prefer to see a symptom before we, really jerk our knee and make some rash decisions on how we're going to deal with parking. But the applicant does propose to construct the parking lot on Devereaux. That will increase our amount of parking on Devereaux from typical parallel parking. Applicant also agrees to promote alternative modes of transportation for his residents and discourage vehicle ownership, or have that type of educational material available, and promote the use of our mass transit and other options nearby. If surrounding businesses or residents experience parking problems, the city may post on-street parking limitations. If it's a business, like I said, we can then, okay, what are the peak hours? People go to eat lunch or dinner typically in peak hours. So what you see in other communities, you'll start to see restrictions on 2-hour parking or something like that, just to ensure that the businesses can keep people moving through, and not have cars that a resident parks there and just leaves, and maybe they drive the car once a week or whatever it would be. So that would then have that restriction. That's one way to control that parking situation. The city can also adopt an on-street parking code and look at various parking permits, looking at identifying who needs parking spaces and where, or how those are available. A lot of the properties around Hill Street School are underdeveloped. I mean, there's some older ones that are to property line and not room to further develop, but there's a lot of vacant land too, on site, on lots. Now, technically, all of those lots are supposed to have their own parking on their site. So as time progresses and improvements are made on other properties around there, we will take a look at all the requirements that we have, that they're required to provide. Keep in mind, and one thing I note in my staff report is that there is interest to expand the historic preservation overlay district towards this area and then across the 60 actually. We anticipate picking that ball up. I think the mayor and council asked when we brought the historic design guidelines to them for approval last year, or over the summer. And they asked, when are we gonna look at expanding our historic district? So that historic preservation overlay district, just to give you some context, it does not require new on-street on-site parking. And the purpose of that is because all of our downtown have the older structures, usually building to the lot lines, and like many downtowns, you would have more of the public parking situation, so you can control or maintain the historic character of that streetscape. And that's the idea of, and encouraging new construction to blend with and be complementary to the historic elevations, and have that build to line, build to that sidewalk to reinforce that pedestrian experience we all go to downtowns to experience, or have. So anyway, just letting you know, that's why in your staff report, there's a bit of an analysis that it doesn't require, two things actually. The historic preservation overlay doesn't require on-site parking, nor does it require, it gives a relief to setbacks to maintain that building line, build-to line that you see in the historic area. All right. And then the city may also look at developing a long-term parking plan for the downtown parking situation and local transit. And continue to keep an eye on that and make sure we're providing all opportunities available to the city. And then the city would also continue to promote ridership and alternative forms of transportation in the area. We've had a number of other, such as ride sharing. I'm not too clear on how busy Uber is in this area, or Lyft, but obviously promoting those other type of forms of transportation will also help support our local economies too. And then there's other things that'll evolve. The timeline for this project, the applicant they anticipate, should their rezoning go through, anticipate making application for their financing with the state in April. That's a deadline. And then aren't committed to close on the property until June of 2023. So there's a lot of time needed for them to get all the ducks in the row and get the financing secured and everything else involved. So by no means would an approval, guarantee that you're going to see a development, especially in the coming year and a half or 2 years, and they can speak more to that. Public outreach and comment. Required citizen review meeting was held back on January 10th, last Monday. A total of 19 people in attendance outside of staff. 2 people expressed opposition due to the anticipated future on-street parking issues and potential crime. 8 of those same people expressed concerns for parking. 3 of those also expressed concern for traffic in the area. And again, tonight you'll receive additional public comment. I did also in your staff report, you had some expressions from a couple other property owners surrounding the site. You can take a look at. One was in support but had concerns with parking, and the other had financing concerns and other details unrelated to that parking. You also received an email just before your meeting here from Stacy Herrera, representing the Chamber of Commerce Realtor Group. And I think that expressed concern over diminishing property values with this development because of the parking and parking concerns. And you can read that email. There might be more concerns, and I think they're here tonight too to express it. With that, and with staff's evaluation of this proposal, staff does recognize, the application checks a lot of the boxes of our city's vision and goals, and with exception to the parking box. So for that reason, the staff would recommend, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend the City Council approve this rezoning. With that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions you have. And then when if you don't have any questions, the applicant is here to introduce himself.
Excellent. So we'll open it up for some questions. Do you have any questions to ask?
No, not at this point, I don't.
I'm curious about one thing. As far as the public transit goes, is there any thought on the subject of making this location a stop for the public transit?
That has come up, Vice Chairwoman, Commissioner Mojica. Yes, I know the Copper Valley Transit can add stops as needed, especially when you have a concentration of seniors or something like that. It especially justifies that stop, but they have the ability to reroute and go within neighborhoods at will. I'm not sure what Miami's process is to get that accomplished, but yes, and that would be a goal.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Chairman Mojica.
Not for me.
Mary, do you have any questions?
I think the questions that I have might be best asked after the presentation of the developers, if that's all right. Is that okay? Okay. Still learning the rules.
Okay.
Commissioners, when speaking, just speak loudly into your mic so everyone's hearing. Thank you.
Do you have any questions or concerns?
Not at this moment.
I have a few questions myself. You say this is senior affordable housing development. What exactly makes it senior and what exactly makes it affordable?
Senior, Madam Chair, would be 55 and up,
55 and older.
and the applicant can correct me, but the affordable part is that 80% of the building needs to be, or of the units need to be leased to people with incomes lower than 60% of the mean average in the census district.
So low housing, basically.
A
Low-income housing.
tax credit is the funding, primary funding mechanism, I understand.
Okay, so affordable is low-income housing to 80%, if I understood that correctly.
80% of the units.
Yes. And then I have another concern, just the parking also. I mean, we don't want to bring it up because we're not sure what exactly is going to be the problem, but you mentioned that they want to encourage no parking on site, but,
No vehicle ownership.
mm-hmm.
Right. To
Well,
discourage that.
But this is for 55 and older. I'm gonna be 53 this year, and I drive a car. Like, I'm not gonna be convinced to give up a car in 2 years. So I don't see how that's gonna work out. But we won't discuss that yet. That's just a concern to keep in mind. The other thing is there was a Devereaux Street where the new parking will be created right here. I've been on that road multiple times. I don't remember it being wide enough for the parking the way it's situated, but it has been measured and it will fit those cars. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. The right-of-way is 60 feet wide.
Okay.
So you have a 6-foot sidewalk, 18-foot deep perpendicular parking space. We have a 24-foot minimum drive aisle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 48 feet. And so the remainder would be the 8-foot parallel parking on the opposite side.
Correct.
So that's 56 feet. So we got 4 feet for landscaping maybe. Or we just don't have to get into the neighbors that encroached into the right-of-way.
Well, I know you talked about the neighbors who have encroached, but is that grandfathered in because of the times that it's been that way, or is that not grandfathered in?
In this location, I didn't mean encroachment. There's a lot of trees, as you can see in that image.
Oh,
right there
okay.
On the north side. Yeah. should be, you just don't know where the right-of-way falls, but we would figure it out at that time.
Okay.
Now regarding other buildings that maybe it's been converted to a restaurant and they don't provide any on-site parking.
Correct.
Yeah, technically at that time when it was allowed to be converted, it probably somebody should have asked for the required parking because your zoning ordinance would require that.
I understand that, sir. Let's see. Now, you did mention another thing about the parking, that there's times, rare peak times on a Saturday night when parking is limited, but that's what you said, so I wrote it down. I don't see that's true, especially not on this East Maple Street. I've been on that street multiple times, and both sides seems to be filled most of the time. And it's not a Saturday night. So that I can already say, these parking spots, I've already eliminated from my count of 24 on Devereaux and 7 parallel to East Maple, giving a total of 31 when we have 70 units. So I can see why people are concerned about parking. Let's see. You said you want to discourage vehicle use and encourage like ride share, like Uber and Lyft, but we are talking about low income housing.
And mass transit and any other options. Birds talked about coming here.
All right, well,
So
I don't.
we look at all alternative modes of transportation.
I mean, I can see why parking is a big issue. This is a big issue because you're talking about a very hypothetical situation that somebody very close to my age is going to give up their car and then they're just going to call Uber or rideshare and pay $10, $15 every time they want to go to Walmart or every time they want to go to Fry's. I mean, that's a very hypothetical situation. So I just want to bring that out. What is the city ordinance for 70 units on 0.79 acres?
With regards to density,
Yes.
so the city's density calculations aren't based on acreage like that. But what this does calculate out to is around, I think, a gross 53 dwellings to the acre.
53 dwellings to
Yeah,
an
and
acre?
that's gross. When we're calculating density, we want to make sure we're calculating the entire city, so we go off to the center lines of the streets,
Okay.
so you can have a actual.
Now, I just want to point out that these are 1 unit, like a single bed locations. Single bed does not necessarily mean one person. It can be a couple. So we can potentially be talking about 140 people because there's 70 units. And if we already have an ordinance of 53 dwellings to an acre, which, I mean, I'm just doing the math here and I'm just thinking out loud, I can see the concern of the residents. So, you say that a lot of the boxes are being checked off in our planning and zoning. This is not one of the boxes being checked off.
The parking one.
The
That's why I said
dwellings.
that's the only one that's.
Oh, okay.
That I'm aware of, but
Okay.
you have other boxes.
No, I was quoting you and I wrote it down. A lot of the boxes of the planning zone have been checked off. So I wrote it down. I just don't see how they have, but you were talking about the parking, so I'll
Right.
put that on there.
Right. That's the one, like I said, the redevelopment of the site, new construction are all goals of the cities.
All right. Well, those were my concerns that I wanted to bring up. And now I want to open this up to the public.
If you,
Oh,
would
hold on a
you
second.
like the
Sorry.
applicant to introduce themselves?
Yes.
Actually, would you mind if I have a couple questions as
Oh,
well?
yes,
Chairwoman?
sorry.
I apologize.
Justin.
Sorry, I'm remote here, so I'm hiding away.
Yes, for sure.
Chairwoman Dana, so if I remember correctly, reading through your report, it also mentioned that Gorman is going to be providing potentially on-site transit services as well. Is that something that has been further discussed yet, or is that still to be further discussed, I guess, in future dates?
It has been discussed. They provide that apparently in other affordable housing projects that they've done. So that was discussed.
Okay, because that definitely, to me, that helps with the senior housing, especially on the affordable side, because I know a big draw from what I can tell from this site, having worked on some senior housing in the past, is the location is pretty key for having a grocery store within blocks, senior center within blocks. This is a pretty prime location for somebody to decide maybe to downsize to that one car, or even to no cars, if something like that is provided. However, I do have a hard time with no on-site parking being provided, but I also see how this starts to become truly that extension of downtown. So I'm not sure. I think I want to hear a little bit more from the developer as well.
Dana, why don't they have on-site parking? Why the 70 units? Why the extra 38 units?
They can respond to that. I believe it's a financial.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead. If there's no more questions from,
I do have one more
Alright.
question, just for the sake of curiosity. You mentioned satisfying 80% of the residents for the low income. Is there any specific criteria for the remaining 20%?
I defer to the applicant. I'm not clear. I know they have to be senior. I'm not too sure if it's market rate or not.
Thank you.
any more questions, concerns? All right, we're gonna go ahead and open it to the floor. And we can go ahead and start with, do we want to start with the presentation?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Yes.
Mr. Dan Clockey from Gorman Company, I'm sorry, Sally Schwen from Gorman Company will address.
Can you make sure you say your name in the microphone, please?
Sure thing. Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sally Schwen. I'm the Arizona Market President for Gorman and Company, and I'm accompanied by Dan Clockey, who is a Senior Development Project Manager for Gorman and Company as well. So thank you very much for your time and consideration this evening. Ms. Dana has given a very good background of the purpose why we're here to rezone the Hill Street School site. I want to give you a really quick background. I know a number of you all were here last week when I was here on Monday evening, but a quick background for those of you that weren't for Gorman and Company. We were established in 1984 by Gary Gorman. We're based out of Madison, Wisconsin. We are in a number of markets. We are in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Florida, and others. We've been in Arizona for the last 13 years. While we've built over 9,000 units throughout the country, we've built over 1,500 here in Arizona. Our core purpose is to initiate strategies and implement solutions to revitalize communities and build strong neighborhoods. So everything that we're talking about with respect to Hill Street School is exactly what we do. And we've gained an incredible reputation nationally through community revitalization, historic preservation, and creating incredible economic impact for both rural and urban communities across the country. We are vertically integrated, which means that we are not only a development company, but we have an in-house architecture, general construction, property management, and compliance divisions as well. We work closely with local governments and community groups to help communities meet their development, planning, and economic and social needs. We work very closely with communities, are very engaged with all community engagement processes, so this is very important to us to hear from everybody and to integrate all comments into our developments.
Can I ask you to pull the mic really close? Thank you.
I'm too tall. Currently in Arizona, we are under about 500 units are under construction, and we've got another 2,000 units in pre-development. We're among the top affordable housing developers and community revitalization developers in the state. So that's a little bit about us. Again, just kind of bringing it full circle from those of you that hadn't heard about Gorman. I'm certainly open to answering more questions about us. The Hill Street School is of great interest to us. On a personal note, I'm a second-generation Arizona native. My mom was born and raised in Miami. My mom and dad were actually married in the Episcopal Church down the street. So there's a lot of sentiment to me to want to come and make such a big impact in the community in this area, bring this school back to life, create a building and community for people to be proud to call home. And so there's a lot of personal reason in addition to the fulfilling the mission that my company that I'm very fortunate to work for is what our primary goal is. So with that, I'm happy to open up for questions. I do want to make one clarity point here with respect to affordability and senior, because I think we got a little bit botched up in that. So before we start on that, if it's okay, Dana, if I if I clarify that. So the intent with this project is to create the majority senior units, right? So of that, we plan to have 80% of the units be set aside for seniors. Seniors are defined per Arizona Department of Housing as 55 plus. In other projects, typically the senior population is older than that. The property in Nogales, which is pictured over on the side wall, our Bowman Plaza, was similar to this project, was a historic preservation project, all senior. We actually brought some interior shots of it this week as well. That is the same demographic. So with that, we do call it affordable housing. We call it affordable versus low income. They are called low income housing tax credits. Our primary source of funding will be low income housing tax credits, but the area median income for the seniors will be at or below 60% of the area median income. So just wanted to clarify that. Of the remaining 20 units, we will be opening that as far as our planning, but they could potentially be market rate. They could be potentially other just typical affordable units. So just wanted to clarify that those 20% don't have to be senior. They may be senior. These are all things that we're in discussions with while we're going through our financial feasibility for the property. When you go through the process, one of the reasons that this project is very attractive and really has the potential to become a reality is because the state Arizona Department of Housing, and actually there's federal funding sources out right now that prioritize the revitalization of rural communities. So given our background and understanding how to put these projects together, we are able to go and come up with a very competitive application for state tax credits, which this project fits the bill. As was previously discussed, a big reason it qualifies for this funding is because of its location to downtown, the walkability to all the services with the grocery and everything else, the drugstore, the senior center. All these are very important components when being awarded funding that would allow this to happen. I think one reason why something hasn't happened here is because the financial feasibility is so difficult to get. So you really need to be able to track the money to come into these communities in order to create the impact and invest in the area. So just to give you a little background there, that's the primary source of funding. And then there's some other funding sources through the state that we're also able to tap to help make this project work. We're talking about a project that'll be in excess of $20 million. So it's a lot of money to put this project together and create an incredible place for people to call home and housing. So with that, I know I said I'd open up for questions a minute ago, but wanted to lay the land a little bit more.
Excellent. Okay, I have a quick question. You said you are second generation Arizonian. Your parents are from Miami. Do they still live in Miami?
No, and that my mother and uncle are from Miami.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So no one from the Gorman and Company will be impacted by what is going to be built here?
No,
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. And then, Ms. Schwinn, just to make sure I understood you correctly, the affordability will be 60% below,
60% or below of the area median income, yep.
60% or below. Okay. Okay, I think you explained that very well. Does anyone have questions for her? Dylan?
Obviously, the parking issue has been brought up. I'm just wondering, has there been any sort of analysis or modeling regarding the current traffic and how it might be affected by this development?
Not at this point, but that is part of our typical work in doing traffic studies and doing that work. So right now, we're just at the point of getting the property zoned and going in for the application for the funding. So then, as Dana mentioned, there's a long process through going through planning and development and getting all the approvals and such. And that's when all of that work comes in play.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary?
As Dylan mentioned, there's a lot of questions about the parking issue. We're talking about, 70 units that could mean 70 people. It could mean more than 70 people. Especially if this is for seniors. These are our elders. These are our families. So there's going to be visitors to the location on a regular basis during the daytime. So that's going to increase the parking need as well. So it's reasonable that the public is concerned that there's no on-site parking with this. Are there changes that could be made to this proposal to both meet the parking concern and still render you eligible for the tax credits that are going to fund this amazing project?
I think that's kind of some work to come. I mean, the only available land, and I don't know, Dan, is the park that we don't really want to build on.
Yeah, I'm Dan Clockey. It was introduced before. Yeah, one of the things that we really want to do. Sorry, I thought I was talking loud enough, but I'm a little bit taller than Sally too, so I don't even know how much this is going to pick me up. But one of the things that's really important for us is to create more of a sense of walkability. This is a really important building in this town. I mean, you can just tell by the passion that people have for it. So we want to do it right. We want to do it right, and we believe that to create an area that's more and more walkable, more tied to the downtown and things that are going on there is incredibly important. When we put cars in the only green space that's available there, we hurt that. We hurt that. And what we want to do is create what's really important from a historic preservation perspective, and I serve actually as the chair of the Phoenix Historic Preservation Commission, so this is really near and dear to my heart. You want to make sure that the views of the historic building, the key views, which you see on Hill Street, you see on Devereaux, and then of course you see at the point, the curved point, you don't want to hide that behind cars. You don't want to hide that behind things that take away from the beauty of the building. And so from a historic preservation perspective, that's actually really important. And we look at that a lot in the city of Phoenix. Obviously a different town and so forth. But that green space there, it's going to add so much to this project, not just for the residents, but for as people who are in the homes across the street, who walk down that sidewalk. We see a lot of kids walking to school. We're going to be able to create sidewalks where there are no sidewalks on Devereaux Street to make it safer for them. And so that's really what we're thinking about. And if we look at our projects that we have with senior housing, like Sally pointed out, the ratio that we're looking at is actually, we probably are less than 0.5 parking spaces in a lot of our other developments. We like this spot not only because of the building, but as has been mentioned many times, it's about 900 feet to Safeway. 900 feet, I think that's what I measured the other day. I mean, that's great. So folks can go there very, very easily. The bus is there, the CVS is around the corner, the senior center is literally just around the corner and down the hill. So these kinds of things we look for specifically because the folks who live here in your community want to be able to access all the amenities and all the good things, quite honestly, that the city's been working on over the years to try to help the downtown come along. And so that's the reason why we're doing that. And just so you know, actually, I live 600 feet from another Gorman senior housing project in downtown Phoenix. You asked the question about, is it going to impact you? Well, one of them actually does impact me. It's right near me and has absolutely no impact on me. You don't even know it's there, to be honest. And so I've had that experience. Before I worked for Gorman, that project went in near my home, and it's been a great asset to the neighborhood. It actually is tucked into a historic district. And so we've done this before. We know how to respect the historic buildings while adding new construction as well. So, but I went on too long, sorry.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions, Mary?
I'm not sure if, I appreciate your sentiments, and especially about the park. I'm not sure if it quite, and maybe I need to hear more about the presentation, but I think what I was looking for is there a way to maybe build up a little bit more so that you can still meet your 70-unit threshold for tax purposes, but we can meet the community's demand for on-site parking? I love the idea of walkability. I've been reading a lot about that in urban planning and things like that. I'm just concerned about using it for senior living because I don't know a lot about that. And maybe that's something we need is a little bit more research about what that really looks like for senior living. I could imagine that downtown for young people working, in businesses and that sort of thing. I know Safeway's only 700 feet away or 900 feet away. I can't imagine my grandmother hauling groceries from 900 feet away. I just can't. So that's where I'm trying to understand, are there other ways to think about this structure that would still meet both demands? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. I just know it's going to be, and I'm just being totally honest, it's going to be very, very challenging to do that on site. It will be challenging. The only space that's left is the green space. And so I'm an urban guy, I'm a downtown guy. This is what I did for 25 years of my career. And so I've experienced a lot of these kinds of developments. And I was on the economic development side, I was kind of more on Dana's side of things. And there's always this concern about parking, legitimate concern. But what I've seen time and time and time again is that it actually doesn't rear its head to people's concern, to the level of concern that a lot of folks have. And I know it's hard to believe because I know you're still struggling right here to get some things going and fill some more stores and so forth. But that's been my experience, and it's just my experience in Phoenix, in Maryland, a couple neighborhoods in Maryland and so forth. So I guess I can't, could we park on the green space? We could, but yeah, the shape is really odd. Exactly, Commissioner. The shape is really odd, and the city's going to say you need 62 feet of width in order to do 2 lines of parking and a drive aisle. Because as soon as you create that, you got to have access for fire trucks, even though it's like right there. It's kind of the crazy things in code, but I think you would probably get maybe 8, 10 parking spaces on that at the most. And so it's a deliberate choice on our part to say, you know what, we really want to create a special place. And it's not just going to be, we're not going to wall this thing off. Our developments are open so that folks can enjoy them. We're not going to put a 6-foot block wall there. If we have anything, it's going to be like a 3-foot little wrought iron fence. But it's important for us that the community can also, that they have the positive impact of this investment as well as the residents, and that the city does as well. I'll be honest, I crawled through this place about 3 months ago. The roof is starting to leak. Things are really starting to go downhill. And that makes me nervous. It really does. But we have an opportunity here, I think, to take this sort of diamond in the rough, if you will, and create something really special. And I think that I understand the struggle with parking. I totally get it. But I think it would be probably detrimental to the project and to the feel for this town if you started creating parking lots. And I say that, if you walk downtown here, if you walk down Broad Street, you don't have any cars in front of your buildings. And how does that feel compared to walking in front of the parking lot at a Walmart that has a sea of parking in front of it? It feels totally, totally different. And it doesn't feel good for the pedestrian. And my understanding from the Globe plan, for the downtown plan, is you want this place to feel like it's made for the pedestrian, that people can walk around and go to the restaurants. We just ate at a wonderful restaurant and had portobello mushrooms and some fun stuff there. You want people going there. And I understand that people are so used to being able to park right in front of their place. But the reality is when you go to Walmart, you park like 400 feet away. If you look at this place here, it's probably from the corner of 60th and Devereaux. If you park there and you had to come around to the point, it's probably almost the same distance as walking to Safeway. It's
Without
probably almost the same.
groceries.
You know, give or take 50, 100 feet. It's not, it's kind of one of these illusions that you have as a pedestrian and as a driver, and how things feel and how they look. And I guess I've just been doing this for so long that I've experienced it again and again and again. So I'll stop, sorry.
You've seen the success on it, so thank you for sharing that passion with us. Okay, does do you have any questions? Mary, did he answer your question?
Yes, and thank you.
I didn't hit it exactly, I know, but I'm speaking from experience and what we've seen.
Chairwoman, I have a question.
Okay, just 1 second, we have one more.
Yes, sir, I had a question. I'm pretty familiar with properties like this, assisted living facilities, independent housing for the elderly and so forth, 80-20. So theoretically, that 20% could be people my age or younger. Staying at 70, that's 14 people, 14 residents.
14, yes.
That would most likely be driving in most cases. I'm just,
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible, absolutely. But what I would say is that these are smaller units. Someone was calculating there could be 140 people. There is not going to be 140 people living in this building.
Well, if they're married, yeah.
Most of them are. Well, there's also 8 studios in there, so those are going to be challenging, I think, to put 2 in. I think if you look at the household demographics of Globe, and I think there's a significant number of folks that are single-parent households or living by themselves. So we're talking about your neighbors. We're talking about people who live here. We're not like bringing people from elsewhere in. These are folks that live here. I think in terms of your concerns about the 14, again, all of our affordable units, when we look at our average of urban projects in the state of Arizona that we've built over the last 13 years, the average number of parking spaces per unit is 0.72. 0.72. Most of them, this is right now, is 0.55, is 39 divided by 70, if we have 70 units. And so we are not far at all from what we've experienced again and again and again. And I'll be honest, when we've parked at that level, we haven't always even filled those up. So, and this is not with all senior housing. This is with family housing. This is with just regular affordable units. And one of the reasons why is, and if you look at the income levels, and these are your neighbors. We looked at the housing study that Globe has commissioned, that Miami Globe commissioned, and we looked at who lives here, the income levels, and so forth. So a car will typically cost you $7,000–8,000 a year if you're paying for a lease or gas and insurance and all that kind of stuff. So a person in Gila County making 60% of area median income for one person is $23,520. If I'm spending $8,000 on a car, I don't have much left after taxes. A lot of those people don't have cars. And so what they are then is stuck They're stuck in places where they can't get to a grocery store. They're stuck in places where they have to depend on family members coming to pick them up. And so by placing it here, and I know the parking is a concern, but by placing it here, we're trying to take away that burden, that financial burden, and then the burden of trying to get anywhere and be as independent as possible. So that's also part of our mindset and why we build senior housing. So my long-winded answer for your
Thank you.
14 spaces.
Thank you.
Okay, Justin Ozivito, you had a comment?
I do have a couple questions, actually. So my first question is, you keep talking about the only place we can put the parking is in the park space. But granted, I just want to point out that this site plan has not been accepted yet. So that there is nothing saying that we would have to put the parking there. So I think the question would be, is there an alternative to where we can find to maybe at least add a few of the spots on site or find ways to expand it? From what I can tell, your new proposed addition it's pretty much a cookie cutter building, probably from something else you guys have worked on, which would make sense to me. So I'm curious if there's ways we could look at modifying that, even if I know your max units you're looking at currently is 70. I know your minimum goal, I think, was something like 63 units or around there. So my question would be, could we look at some alternative, even if it's looking at how could we potentially include perpendicular parking on Maple Street, and let's say that actually interjects into a portion of the site. It's going to make the building smaller, or perhaps our new entry and elevator, that section actually needs to go away. Our new proposed building moves up against our historic building, and the elevator and entry ends up moving to a different portion of the building, right? So I think there's some ways we can still hopefully look at modifying this. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I want to hear kind of your thoughts on this.
So, I'm sorry, can you hear me when I'm talking like this? Okay. So
Yes.
I think one of the things, and I don't want to get into the weeds on measurements and all that kind of stuff. I would love to have perpendicular parking on Maple Street, but not at the expense of making it unwalkable on the sidewalk. So
I apologize. I'm not talking about modifying. I'm talking about actually having to modify and pull that perpendicular parking into the site and have to use something that extends beyond the right of way.
So a parking space would require 18 feet. The building that
correct.
The building that you're seeing there is 60 feet. Okay, it's a double loaded corridor with a unit on each side of the corridor as you walk down. If we took 18 feet out, that's almost the width of one of those entire sides of.
So let's say instead we take the 8 foot of the parallel. So all we need is additional 8 feet or 10 feet at that point, correct?
8 plus 6 feet for a sidewalk.
Right. But you already have the sidewalk there. So I'm just saying you already have 8 feet for your parallel parking, right? So if we take the additional 10 feet, we're at our 18 feet. And then we still have our 6 foot sidewalk, but really we're only pushing the building back at 10 additional feet. So I'm curious what that distance is for that elevator shaft and entry currently as well.
So the elevator is going to be your standard elevator size. I think it's probably 8 feet wide, give or take. And the reason we do this, and again, I don't want to get into the weeds too much. We do this, we connect the two buildings with an elevator and common corridors, so that we don't impact the historic school by putting an elevator into the middle of it and trying to blow that out. So we do that for a purpose, and that's the most important side of a historic building. So that's why it's there. We could look at trying to shorten that corridor. The biggest issue will be, how do you get into the building then? Because you can see there's a walkway, and I'm sorry you all can't see this, but there's a 4 or 5 foot walkway that comes in from Devereaux into the building. And so you need to make sure that you have that so that you can get in. So what I can say is we can look at it. I don't want to promise it to you, because there's nothing worse than a developer who promises something and then reneges later, because I'm not going to do that. So we can certainly look at it. Again, if we did perpendicular parking, my hunch is you would pick up maybe 5 or 6 more spaces, but that's it. You can't park out too far close to the corners because of visibility triangles and things like that. So if you did that, my guess is at the most 5 or 6 parking spaces. And you would remove your ability to put in trees then too, unless you want to remove more parking spaces. So it's this.
Yeah, so it only included, when I was doing some quick measurements and little drawings here, the max you get is additional 7 spaces, and that's with not having that additional tree island in the center there. So it is tight.
Yeah. And we want to make sure there's some trees there too. We think that's pretty important to green up
Yep.
the site, because right now, if you walk by it, it's all asphalt. It's all asphalt. And the other thing to remember too, and actually, and a really critical point to this is that if you walk on that sidewalk, the land itself is about 3 feet higher than the sidewalk. So we're going to have to figure out how to get rid of that height, or it's going to be at that height. And so that would preclude any parking going in unless we excavate the entire parking lot site. And we may have to, don't get me wrong. But that's going to be challenging, I think, to do that. One of the things I do want to point out is that folks were concerned about loading last time, and so we figured out, you know what, we took out some parking spaces and we put in a loading zone on Hill Street because some of the businesses were concerned about, they have trucks come in to do drop-offs, so we have one there. We also have a loading zone then on Devereaux. You can see sort of that cutout near the corner of Maple and Devereaux, so that, again, if there was a drop-off that needed to happen, they would pull off of the road, and it wouldn't be a safety issue. So we thought that that was a really important and really good comment, quite honestly, coming from folks who were at the meeting last time. So.
Right. So what would happen per se? So what is your actual make or break number, do you think, on the amount of units you have to have? Because I know that 70 units is getting pretty tight on this site, and 63 is probably pretty tight as well. So I know probably the only way to include parking spots on site would be to obviously limit the number, most likely, of actual units you're constructing, correct?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it wouldn't work.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured.
We wouldn't do it. And the reason is the school, as lovely as it is incredibly inefficient. You have 10-foot wide corridors and so forth. So you can only use probably, I'm guessing, about 60% of all the space within the school for actual living. And so the school is 34,000 square feet, and it has up to 26 to 32 units. The new building, which is 31,000 square feet, has 38 units. Because you can create efficiency with a new building that was built to be housing. So we're going to struggle trying to reduce it below what we have. Most tax credit projects like this are typically at least 70 units, 60 to 70 units, probably 60, 65. We're doing one which is right around that, and we're doing one that's like 105 units. So it's a financial thing. I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but
yep, no, that makes sense to me. I was just curious.
Yeah, but we will
and then I do have an additional question on the Bowman Senior Residence down in Nogales. How was the experience on that with parking? Is there parking provided for that complex? Is it all on street? What's it looking like currently?
Hi, can you guys hear me? Yeah, so for Bowman, the parking actually is across the street, and it's shared parking with some of the office or community buildings in downtown. Literally, you can see the border. It's right at the entrance to Mexico. So it's like on a triangular piece of land. So that was a property that, again, we really just left the shell of the property. Everything else was completely gutted and is a historic property. So there's no parking on site there at all. It's all street.
Okay, but there is parking that is provided across the street for that complex?
Yep.
Do you know what percentage of parking you provided? So was it the 0.5 for every unit, or?
I have to check, but I believe that property is at 0.5.
Okay.
It's under, I know that it's under our average of the 0.7 that Dan talked about for our portfolio.
And I'm gonna take a stab in the dark and say there was probably no issues with that one so far. I've been past it once or twice. It's a pretty cool complex.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm glad you've seen it. It's always helpful when people have seen our product, so.
Yeah, and also I commend you guys on saving that storefront. I know that's pretty much all that got saved. I was following up when it was getting built. It was a pretty unique undertaking.
Lots
Yeah,
of
I think that
stories
answers
to
all
go
my
along with
questions.
that
Thank
one.
you, and thank you, Chairwoman.
Justin, do you have any more questions?
That'll do it. Thank you. I appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you very much.
I
We're-
do have just
Okay,
a couple.
yes, please.
I'm just curious, I may be asking you to repeat yourself a little bit here, but what do you mean, like, what's the exact, what's going to be the methods of discouraging having a vehicle?
Well, there's not a discouraging. I mean, it's not like we don't want people to not have a vehicle.
No, I'm sorry if that's a poor choice of
Right,
words,
right,
but
right.
to, maybe instead of saying that, maybe to encourage.
Walkability.
Yeah, walkability of foot traffic.
And it's exactly providing the housing that's here, right? So creating this building with the walkability, with the amenities associated with the project, right? So it really speaks to itself and will attract those folks. So again, it sounds like a lot of units, but it's really not a lot of units when there's so much demand. So it's not, and from our experience, our issue is always being able to fulfill all the folks on our waiting list, right? So there's going to be some people that this doesn't work for, but there's more people than it does work for. So there's an incredible demand out there, of which the majority of our projects all have waiting lists that are extensive. So again, it's not an issue of discouraging, it's creating a project that attracts people that need these amenities, that need this project and need the new housing, because there's such a need for housing in the community. So it's a provide the supply and demand, if you will.
And I guess one last question. This is going to be focused on seniors, but let's say there's a set of circumstances where a senior has legal custody of a minor. Does that affect their applicability?
So I should have my asset manager here for that. I mean, as far as the grand family situation, which we do run what we call grand family properties. We have one in Arizona and one in Wisconsin as well. Those are set aside for grandparents that are raising children, right? And a lot of times those are designated as senior. So typically, like for Bowman, that's a property that we don't have that situation for the resident profile. Doesn't mean that doesn't come up, and doesn't mean that wouldn't be an issue. So in order to qualify for senior for Arizona Department of Housing, one of the residents needs to qualify as a senior.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Any more questions? Okay, we're going to go ahead and open it up for the floor. Thank you, Sally. Roxanne McIntyre? Oh, okay. Shelley Vasandovich? Vixandovich? Oh, goodness. S. Rice?
Yes, Commissioner.
And just repeat your name in the microphone, please.
Sherry Rice. Madam Chair and Commissioners, gee, it's good to see you, Commissioners. Your new ones, congratulations on your appointments. I have some questions. I have 5 questions here, and 3 of them are mine, and 3 are Deborah Yurkovich. She was here earlier and had to leave and passed on, excuse me, her questions to me. One of the things that we haven't heard addressed is laundry facilities. Are they in the unit, or is there a general one, or?
We provide washer dryers
In the unit, thank you. And we didn't hear about pets. Pets are allowed. Okay. And are we understanding that there's only one elevator? How does that play into safety for emergencies or law enforcement or fire to have to get in with just the one elevator? Or,
Not had a problem typically, we put one elevator in for 9 units.
okay, thank you.
And there are multiple sets of stairs too, as well as an elevator, so
Yes.
you can access it, yes.
Okay. Stairs. And the application process, you've stated they have to be 55 and older, at least one, for the 70%, for 80% of the units. And you mentioned a waiting list. So would people in the Globe have like a first priority, or Gila County, or how does that work?
Well, I think typically, again, what we're doing is building this to provide housing for those that live here.
Okay.
So,
Would they have like priority for applications, or is it first come, first serve, or?
it's generally first come, first served.
Okay.
And then we have a waiting list for those that want.
Tends to happen though, is when you're building a building in someone's community, they notice it, and there'll be a sign up saying, we're starting to lease. And so folks who live here are gonna see that first. People in Phoenix certainly aren't driving by to see it, so
Mhm.
Can you come
that
up to the mic?
tends to happen, yeah. I was just saying that when you have a construction project and so forth like this, it's noticed obviously by the people who are close to it. We typically don't have people driving from 60 miles away to see this. And so naturally, people who are looking to lease there are people who are in the area. We can't, by fair housing standards, say, oh, you live in Phoenix, you can't live here. But the reality is, when people see a development like this, it's because they're walking around or driving by it because they live here. So that tends to fill it with those folks.
And that answers my questions. I just like to remind everyone that this is a first step of a long process. And today, my understanding that this is contingent upon this first step of you getting your funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. The next person, Eric Dufrene.
Hello, I'm Eric Dufrene with Oak Realty, and I'm here on behalf of the local real estate community. So we met this morning. I think it's wrong to say, let's not think about parking, because parking's not an issue until we know it's an issue. Parking's gonna be an issue, and it's gonna affect the values in the neighborhood. It's gonna, I don't know if there's gonna be any type of new traffic signals that'll be going up, because I drove that today, and that visibility triangle is bad as it is bad right now. You put another building on the 0 lot line, it's gonna be worse. Plus, that's the only exit from the high school parking lot. And I was there today, and by the way, that is not 60 feet, it's 46 feet from the wall to the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk is another 6 feet. So I just don't see how they're gonna have these new drivers, inexperienced drivers coming out from the high school, and then people trying to park. It's just gonna be a nightmare. So, I mean, it's awesome that you're coming into the community. I think you're looking at the wrong thing. I think we have affordable housing. We have subsidized housing. Every big apartment complex in town is a subsidized housing. We don't have issues with that. We have issues retaining professionals. Doctors coming into the community, they can't find a rental. Your places would be nicer than the ones they can rent for twice what your tenants pay. So the issue is retaining professionals, teachers, doctors, nurses. They come in, and landlords are gonna look at, they see supply and demand. Our supply is super low, and why is it low? Because the only other option is subsidized.
And just to clarify, these are not subsidized.
It's low income. So what's that number? What is that income number? Is that the 23,000?
Just for a single person.
Yeah.
For two people, it is almost $27,000.
Yeah, so that's not even minimum wage on a full-time worker. So those are the people that can't find a rental are the people that are working. You know, not the people that can't afford it, because they have options. They have the Christie Apartments, they have Pinal Apartments, they have the apartments down by our office. They have Madera Peak for the seniors. That's all subsidized. That's all low income. There's nothing for the professional, except some duplexes out in Crestline, and those are nice. I mean, they were built in the 70s, but nothing new. So I think we're all looking at this housing study saying, oh, seniors have no options. These empty nesters, where are they gonna go? They're gonna, we need for them to have an option. Sell their house, then they can move into these places. Sell their house, they're empty nesters. They've lived there forever. They've raised their family. That house is paid for. They might be low income, but when they get a $150,000, $200,000 check in their checking account, they'll no longer qualify for your housing. They will. Oh, well,
And that's the whole idea.
okay.
For those people to move out of those homes, to open them up for.
So doesn't matter on net worth, it's the income. Okay, well, there's that question. All right. But I still think the parking's an issue. I have a brother that lives on Sutherland and Cottonwood. If you permit your parking, if you limit your parking for certain hours for business owners, so they can have their parking, that means those people are definitely gonna be in the neighborhood, and they're definitely gonna be parking in front of houses, and it's just gonna, it'll just snowball. But that's our opinion, and that's our stance.
Hold on there, Mr. Dufresne. I have a question
Okay.
to ask that. Just to be clear, you said the measurement from wall to the sidewalk was 46 feet.
46 feet, yeah.
And,
And then from Tiger's Den, or the building on the corner of Devereaux and Maple, used to be the old Tiger's Den back when I was in school, it is 53 feet from that building to the wall.
okay,
So it is not 60 feet, so it's tight.
okay. Let me just ask, Dana, did you said you made a measurement of that and it was 60 feet? So there's a discrepancy on the measurement of that. Is that what we're saying?
Chairwoman, if you take a look at your screen,
Yep.
the city has a 60-foot right-of-way.
Okay, so it has a 60-foot right-of-way, but there's things on that space right now, is what I'm looking at. Is that correct?
Correct, and that's what I meant about the encroachments. So when we look at redeveloping our 60-foot right-of-way, we take a look at that.
So we're talking about taking away this encroachment that these residents have had for, how many years do you think?
Eons.
Eons years.
No, we wouldn't take it away, but it's a city improvement. Anytime we're going in to improve our right-of-ways, you gotta take a look at.
Does that get grandfathered in?
No, they're on
Never?
city property. That's
Okay.
a liability for the city to
Okay.
have people's assets or personal property in our right-of-way, and then if it gets obviously hit or a problem, the city pays the bill.
All right. I understand what you're saying, but I'm gonna agree with you. I don't like that, because if that was my house, I don't like that.
Well, you're saying
So-
the city pays the bill. You're asking people to park their vehicles on city property. That's an asset.
So there's this is their improvements. Like I said, we don't want people building things in our right-of-way that aren't the city's.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But the measurement is
So if
off. I
somebody
mean,
runs into
you're-
it-
You're going into someone's property. If you're saying it's gonna be 60 feet, you're tearing down retaining walls and saying, we're moving them back because we need that space. And it's not off by much, but it's off.
I think, can you measure from the school outline to the curb?
That was the measurement I made today.
It was,
It was 49 or 46 feet from the school wall, the wall where the fence is sitting on top of that wall, to the sidewalk.
Can you make that line as parallel as possible? It's not quite parallel.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you it's a 60-foot right-of-way. When we do right-of-ways, they're standard dimensions.
Okay.
We don't have 58.6. We probably do someplace. Well, we do someplace, but these are consistently platted right-of-ways from turn of the century.
All righty.
Well-
Thank you. Another concern, Mr. Dufresne, that you brought up was that $23,000 a year for a single person is less than minimum wage for a full-time worker.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we're talking about moving people in that are making less than minimum wage for work, basically. Is that correct? So it is very much
Well,
a
I'm
low.
just saying that that's not the issue we're having is there's plenty of places for them to go. And I'm not saying that those places are packed and there's not a waiting list for those apartment complexes as well. But unfortunately, this housing study, it wasn't done, it's not totally finished, and they're saying that affordable housing is the only housing Globe needs. It's not. Globe needs housing that's gonna attract the professional to come in and work at the hospital, to come in and teach in the schools, and not leave after their 2-year contract is up. Because that's what's happening. The hospital is having a hard time retaining employees. They pay them a ton of money. And what they do is they come in out of med school, they go in, they make a ton, they pay their student loans off, and they are gone. Because they don't want to live in inferior housing. And your housing would be awesome. What would be great is, let's make the parking lot, let's just redo Hill Street School or tear the school down. It's not that big of a deal. If we cared so much about that school, somebody would have messed with that a long time ago. This place is falling down, and I guarantee in a year and a half when you guys close escrow, if you think it's in bad shape now, it's not gonna get any better. So, I think I'm getting off here.
No, but Mr. Dufresne, thank you for your comments. I just want to make sure I understood. You are opposed to this?
Oh, no, I'm for it. No, I am opposed.
Oh, okay. Okay, just double checking. I don't want to,
I'm not opposed to you guys coming in, but
you're
I
opposed to
just
the
don't
low.
think that, if you could take it, sorry. Back in the mic. Okay, so it's too bad you couldn't say, we're gonna develop Hill Street School, we're gonna have 33 units in there, and we're not gonna charge subsidized, or low income or affordable housing. We're gonna charge market, and then we're gonna have a parking lot in our space, but I know the tax breaks are probably huge, a lot more than you'll make in rent. Okay, so it's the financing. Yeah, okay. So, I think that if you were able to charge market rent and fill those spaces, you'll make twice as much on those particular units, and then you wouldn't need that second space, and it would still be a moneymaker. But if it's for the financing, I guess I get it. But I think there's a better way to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Dufresne.
Thank you.
Next person, Dallin Law.
I'm Dallin Law, thank you. This wasn't my original question. It got answered with the 23,000, so thank you for that. I want to address our house. We have a home right on the corner of Maple and Devereaux. One of my concerns was when you mentioned it's going to be a great view. Well, I have a great view right now, but with the 3-story roof right across from the porch, I don't have a view anymore. And I know I'm just one guy. That's just a very personal opinion. My biggest question is Maple, not Maple, Devereaux, was how many feet? 40 from
46 feet from the wall to the sidewalk.
For the sidewalk. So if you put parallel parking along the sidewalk of my house, how many feet's that? 10? And then if you come out from the new building, 8 for a sidewalk, 16, you got 24 plus 8, you got 32 in a 48-foot wide road. How is that going to work? Or how do you get two-way traffic in there? You can't even get two-way traffic. I don't think it's even feasible with what's there right now. If you put a sidewalk, if you put perpendicular parking, and then you have parallel parking on the other side, there's like 16 feet left for two-way traffic on a very busy road.
Yes, sir.
So they're gonna take away my parallel parking?
Public parking, so your tenants.
You got up to the mic there, could park there, you can park there, it's public parking.
Right, so I'm saying, well, I could park, right, so I can park there, but when I do, that only leaves 16 feet.
You can park in those perpendicular parking spaces, that is public parking.
Right, I understand, but somebody's gonna parallel park in front of my house. And that leaves very little room. I mean, I don't know what it is, 16 feet, 20 feet for a two-lane road?
One of the things is, that my understanding is students egress in the other way, they don't come out that way.
Oh, they'll get ticketed if they go out the other way. It's against the, it's, assuming they change it. But you still don't have enough room for a two-lane, I mean, the other thing is just, I'm trying to wrap my head around picturing less than an acre with 70-plus people living there, and I just can't wrap my head around how that's gonna work. And then to say it's walkable to the senior center, that's like 6 blocks. It's not like where the bird flies on here. It's a major walk around, up and down, and so that's not a legitimate thing, I don't think, of walking distance to the senior center or down there. So anyway, those are my concerns. And I know that I've worked in the real estate business. I've looked for 25 years. We have needs, and I get that, and I know it sounds like, well, not in my backyard kind of thing. I wish I had a good answer, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Law? No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Cecil Barton. Oh, Mr. Law, I forgot to ask you, are you opposed to this plan?
Yes,
All right,
I like the idea, but yeah.
okay.
Cecil Barton, Hill Street. Every day I look at this building. I've been in Globe about 12 years, which is not very long. I had a business there. And this is something good for Globe, done by experts. Between the expert that we have over there, Dana, and these people, I think they'll solve your problems. It's interesting for me to sit here and watch, pardon the expression, amateurs make mathematical computations when the experts will handle it. That building is so gorgeous, and it's not falling down, it's poured concrete. It's a fortress. I've crawled through it too with a contractor. At one time, he and I fantasized what could be done there. And a lot could be done. And this can be done. And it's just removing another festering sore from Globe. That's the way I look at it. It's a great school, it's a great historic thing. And as far as traffic and parking, I hope it can be resolved. I think it'll encourage more businesses. I think it'll increase the value of my property. I'm an amateur on that, but that's the way I feel. So I'm in favor of it, and thank you for the opportunity this evening. Good luck to all of you. You've got a lot of responsibility, and do it.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Barton? All right, thank you, Mr. Barton. The next one is Tina Andarisi. Andarisi, sorry.
Hello, my name is Tina Andrews, and I own the business, or the house that's the 2-story next door to Nurburger on Hill Street, so right across the street from the Hill Street School. And as is, My tenants have had their cars sideswiped twice sitting on the street. I don't have off-street parking. I can't offer off-street parking. I don't even own my driveway. Technically, Nerdburger now owns my driveway. So literally, I don't have anywhere even to offer my tenants, so I'm kind of grandfathered in. However, not only do I own 4 apartments right there, which most of the time each tenant has had 2 cars per apartment, which is 8 cars already. There's a duplex right next door that has both apartments rented out to people that have 2 cars per apartment. Right on the opposite side of that, there's another. I think he has 6 apartments or 8 apartments that's right there, and he owns a little like lot in the back that his tenants park in for the most part. Although sometimes the tenants do park on the street, and people don't know how to drive. Okay, so you have you're proposing that there's 70 seniors, that at least 70, and then you have high school kids. So that meshing right there, and the high school kids, it's a flood of kids that come out of that school every day. And they come out quickly. They're kids. They don't know how to drive, and they want to show off to their friends. And so 85% of the time, it's people freaking slamming on their brakes to get to the light. So they slam on their brakes after speeding up just to show that they have exhaust. Like they don't know how to drive. So you want to add that. And on top of that, the business next door, there are times I come home and I have to park 2 houses down just because they are that packed. And it doesn't make sense why I don't own a business myself to coincide with their traffic, because they have the traffic. And it's Sunday and the traffic is still thick. It doesn't matter what day of the week, and their business is closed on Sunday. So for Sunday to even have a lot of traffic in that area right there is just crazy. So all the parking you guys want to propose, you guys are getting greedy with it. You guys don't have to be greedy with it. You guys can do, one building and parking on the site, or like California has, how they have the parking garage is underneath the building. The gymnasium in that school is huge, and it's a really big open space. And I'm pretty sure you guys can do 2 layers of cars right there, and then park, the rest in apartments. But you guys just don't got to be greedy with it, man. And that's my front yard. It's my front yard. I'm gonna have 70 people just glued to the window every morning whenever my dog does walking handstands. That's not cool. I don't want to do that. Just saying. It kind of makes me it makes me uncomfortable, to know that there's gonna be 70 apartments that have plenty of windows. What else are they gonna do other than look at my house? Really? I mean, just saying. So that's all. Just
Okay, Miss Andrazi, make sure I understand you correctly. You're saying there is already a parking problem.
There's already a parking problem, yeah.
So adding more tenants would create.
That's not a good idea. And you can't say, well, oh, you can't have kids that drive because that's against the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act. You can't discriminate on kids. You can't discriminate on age, and you can't discriminate. You can't discriminate. And the way that I don't know what the measurements are, but there's no way that I could park a car. I have troubles parking my cars just along the sidewalk, but let alone pulling them in like that. That's crazy. That's not even a doable or feasible option. It's just not feasible. It can't be feasible. It can't be. And that's a lot of cars.
Thank you, Ms.
You just
Andrazi.
gotta, really, you guys just gotta contemplate using the gymnasium as a 2-story parking, come on now. I don't know what the grant says, that, whatever the grants are saying as far as the number of units being, I would go with the minimum, and then, I don't know how you'd work that from there, but you guys aren't gonna work with that. That's not gonna work. That's a lot of buildings. And a lot of apartments, and a lot of people, especially coinciding with the kids. That's not gonna happen. So, I say no.
Okay, does anyone have questions for Ms. Andrazi?
Okay, don't get me wrong. I would like that school to be something. I do want that school to become something, but not doubled and then made into low-income apartments. It has potential. It has a lot of potential, but you guys are definitely going downhill with that. I know it's downhill too, huh?
Okay, we do have one question for you.
Yeah.
Did you have one? No. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Thank you, Ms. Andrazi. Andries, sorry. Next person, Taylor Harrison.
Hi, I'm Taylor Harrison. I'm the owner of Nerdburger and the lot next to it. I feel like Frodo Baggins right now because this is like a ring that I got to bear. It's a burden. I spent 8 years at that spot building the business up from nothing. That entire street was empty. filled with drugs, filled with break-ins, filled with really bad stuff. I got broken into 8 times. I handled it most of the times myself. But anyways, I'm kind of forced to be here because this would essentially shut my business down. And I've been here, I've been part of the community. These people haven't. He hasn't. They don't, their approach is so far distanced to our community that it's not even funny. This whole project, all of our solutions, which would be build on the parking lot, it's logic, right? They got parking, do it. But they can't do it because they want to use tax money to do something else. So this is a money issue. This isn't a logic or a sensibility issue. It's a money issue. Now for me, I gotta be here because it is a money issue for me. It would put my business essentially out of business because they would take up the entire street of parking where I have people coming from Sholo, Tucson, everywhere to come eat there. And you can say, oh, it's locals, it's locals. I love the locals. That's why I'm here. You know, and he talks about downtown Phoenix and stuff like that. Well, that's the reason why I don't live in downtown Phoenix. I don't go to downtown Phoenix because parking is horrible. I love to go to the Diamondbacks games. I stopped going because parking is a nightmare. I'd rather watch it on TV. I don't want to deal with that crap. And for him to bring it here, trying to tell all of us, hey, this is okay. Look, we do it in Phoenix. This ain't Phoenix. You know? And, you know, I get really emotional with this because I have put 8 years of blood, sweat, tears into the community with my burger restaurant. Just a little burger restaurant, and I'm working on it. I don't have a whole lot of money, you know, so I'm trying to improve the neighborhood as it goes, like Tina. We're all people that put our own money into this. And blood, sweat, and tears. She's dealt with a lot of crazy tenants, I could tell you, because I live next door to her, and a lot of issues, and that's just what we do. And parking is, I bought that lot next to me, hoping to expand because we have been growing so much. For him to say, Saturdays it gets busy. I am there all day long. I live in the house next door. I work there all day. I had to leave. We had a bunch of school kids coming in because they have some sort of basketball or wrestling or something. I had to leave my cook unattended by himself to come here. And, you know, them to sit there and tell us, well, it's not that bad. It won't be that bad. They're never there. I'm there all the time. And I'm glad you guys are here because I feel like last week I was against everybody. These guys were all in on it trying to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. So trying to think, you know, to explain away the reasons for this. And you know what? I really find it offensive that their reasoning, and they just said it earlier, is to get older people out of their homes that they spent their whole life working for. It's just not common sense to pay a house off, be retired, be comfortable, sell it because I want to move into something smaller. Give it to somebody else. No, they worked their whole lives for that house, for their vehicles as well. Oh, you're too old. You don't need your vehicle anymore. Let's give it up. No, they worked their whole life for that. So, I mean, I have a lot to say on this issue. And on top of that, when Dana was talking about, well, the city owns the sidewalk, we can take it if we want it. Well, my business has paid $68,000 in taxes in the past 6 years. I did my numbers. And I have not gotten one thing that the city has done for me. Where does that money go? Nobody has came over to flip a burger in my restaurant. Nobody has changed my sidewalks. Nobody's fixed the water line. That's money it's just out the window. And that's what they're saying right here. These guys are gonna matter because that's what they want. They want it, they can take it. We all pay taxes. These guys are trying to use the taxes against us. I mean, I don't see any other avenue here or anything, you know, who here would buy a house and in 8 years after working their butts off on an old historic home, trying to restore it, because the house I have was built for the Hill Street School. It was the dean of that school in 1915. They built that for him so he could live in a house and manage the school. They did that back in the day. And I know a lot of history about the school in the area because I have to talk to my customers about it. They come into our gateway and ask, what's up with this old school? What's going on? And I talk to them. I'm like a historian for that school because I'm right there. So I know more history than all these people on that school. They get on, learn what they can about it so they can come into town, throw up a unit, and bail out. These guys don't live here. Make money off of us and get out. When the problem hits where we can't park and my business goes under, they're not going to be here to fix it. It's done. You can't reverse it. The high school's been there for 100 years. What are we going to do if it gets too crazy? What kids are getting in accidents? Now they have to be staying on school campus because there's too many accidents, there's too much crime. Let's change all the laws now because of this. Let's change everything. Let's move the Globe High School after 100 years because of this. And I'm sorry, low income is not the best entryway to a city that we're trying to build up. Like, let's go to Globe. Oh, right next to the low income housing, right when we come through the front gates of Globe. And you know, my burger shop's small and it's not very attractive, and I'm working on it. Eventually I'll get there. But people come from all over to see it, and then they wander downtown. 3 days ago, I got a review. Says right here, I have to pull it up. This was 3 days ago, because this happens all the time. This ain't just once or twice. So this guy says, absolutely amazing burger place. Good job, everybody that works there. I'm going to start planning my road trip so I can stop there twice a day. Love the whole team. Keep up the great work. That's somebody not from our town. That means I'm bringing people to our town instead of them bypassing us. And we keep throwing low-income places into our town. We're going to be a bypass town. Also, we're going to create this area right here is going to be the highest density population in the entire city of Globe, next to a high school. What's that? Oh, next to a high school. It's insane. I mean, I'm glad Mr. Kuhneman's here because he's been in my life since I was a young kid. So he's part of the Globe Christian Center, which is right there. And I've been a part of that church for a while. Parking for them, it overflows into that area of Maple. And that's a good thing. People going to church is an awesome thing. It's the best thing that can happen. But if you take up the parking, that's going to discourage people from even going to church. And that's why Mr. Kuhneman is here. And that's great. Because he's a man of faith, and he's been in the church for many, many, many years. And everybody else here, you know, I got to quit rambling on because I had a lot of time to think about this. And I mean, who here would want a 3-story house with 70 people that you don't know watching you? There is not just me, there's 8, 9, 10 houses on Hill Street. And then there's, you know, Mr. Law and everybody else that have houses that their privacy will be shot. The community's privacy will be shot. And I'll tell you one other thing. This is crazy. I don't know why this happened today, but I was driving to Safeway. I saw one of my regular customers, Louis, walking. And I thought, why is he walking today? The old 70-something-year-old man. His truck must have broke down. So I passed him, and I thought, I better ask him. I get back to the kitchen, wash my hands, get ready. An order comes back for Louis. He's been my customer for 7 years, and I know his order by heart. I give him his food. He takes off. Now he's walking because his car broke down. Hour and a half later, I get a call from his grandson asking, hey, did my grandpa come in to get food today? I said, yeah, he did. I said, what happened? He was walking and he passed out. He fell against the curb and somebody stole his $1,000 he just took out of the bank. This is true. I don't know if he heard anything about it today, but you know, this is true. We think it's high school kids. We don't know. A lot of shady people. But that's the thing. He doesn't normally walk. He drives every day. I see his green truck come up. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know I would have given him a ride home if I knew that. I thought he was out walking because he wanted to walk. He fell down, passed out, went to the hospital, and $1,000 was stolen out of his pocket. He was walking from Washington Federal, you guys know where that's at, to get money out, then to come to the burger place to eat, and then he walks home.
Vice Chair, if we could, we're getting off topic here.
It's not.
And also keep in mind,
the topic is we're walking, right? Seniors are walking.
But the agenda item, please.
Okay.
And we try and keep your conversations to 3 minutes so we can get everybody through here.
Does anybody have questions for me?
Make sure I understand you, Mr. Harrison. You're saying there's already a parking issue, that
Yeah, I
Increasing
have,
the parking will create a negative impact on your business, and that you are creating business for the globe. Is
yeah,
that-
and jobs. 12 people work at my establishment right now. I put 6 high school kids through college. They worked there for 4 years, went to nursing school, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I would say that's positive.
And so am I gonna say this is a no for you?
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question for Mr. Harrison? Okay, thank you, Mr. Harrison.
If you want to speak, go up with my.
The next person is Sarah Bernstein.
Hello, my name is Sarah Bernstein. I'll put it right out there, I'm a senior citizen. I'm a Globe resident. I'm a business owner, and I've spent a fair amount of time in this downtown. I was here at the meeting last week and I expressed my concerns. I think first and foremost, we're focusing a lot on parking, but I think we have to take it a step back, and it really starts with safety, and it starts with the safety of our children. Because what's most important, what goes on in that neighborhood, is the school. It's our high school. And our children have a right to learn, and that school's been there for about 100 years, and I think it serves a good purpose. And I've had 2 children now that have come up through Globe High, and I can tell you I've personally had experience with that in the evening with sporting games, during the day, middle of the day as I go to run errands for my business. And yes, it's a high-traffic area. So I think we really need to be concerned for the safety of our children. Not only that, but imagine if this facility were to be implemented and you have some young person who's a new driver who's leaving that parking lot who has all the best intentions, and somebody who's living in that housing facility steps out in front of them. That would be a major game changer for both people, the person who maybe would be hit and the person driving the car. I think putting this type of a facility next to an existing school, being that that's been there for 100 years, I'm not sure is the best answer. Last time I was here, I shared my thoughts as to how I would handle it. I've spent several years in this community working on properties. I would think, I'm going to choose my words carefully. I would like to think that some of my activities have added to the value of this community. The way I look at it is basically, on one hand, these people, I think to myself, sometimes we have to ask ourselves, are they investing in us? Are we investing in them? It's a good thing to ask yourself. For me, sometimes I think that maybe what's going on here, we have to be mindful. We're thinking like, okay, well, we can go after these tax credits and we can go after low-income housing, but that perhaps may be short-sighted. We're looking at just the costs. Are we really looking at what the long-term ramifications are and the long-term value of such a development will be to our community? If we're trying to get people to come up and hang up on the weekend, or I know Tracy has a business where people drive up and they might ride their bikes up, they leave the metropolitan area, they want a cool place to throw one back, be able to yak it up, have fun, admire everybody's bikes, a lot of different things. But who are we really trying to attract here? So I asked myself, after last week's presentation, well, a couple different things. Sorry, I'm getting scattered. This is late for me. The proposed addition, you've got the Hill Street School, then you've got the corridor between linking the 2 buildings. I have concerns. I'm no architect, but I've been involved with construction. If you want to have 70 units and 1 elevator for 70 units where you have 80% of your populace is senior and the other 20%, who knows? If you have an emergency, I have a great concern with that. You're asking a lot out of somebody who's on the 3rd story of a building if a lot of people maybe are slow to move to get out of that space when you have multiple stories. So that to me is a safety concern. Last week I spoke to the idea of perhaps where you have your proposed addition, maybe instead of doing what I view as a fairly overly aggressive building site, you know, I think if I remember correctly, your site in Wisconsin in the Pabst Brewery in Milwaukee was a site where you developed condos. not low-income housing. And I stand to be corrected, if so, and please do so. I would like it if you would. But to me, I was under the understanding that was a very different project from what you're attempting here. Now, to me, you could take your proposed addition, build ground level parking, also build storage for your residents, and then maybe not have as many units above it. That way, you're providing off-street parking, you're, keeping it all within the confines of your property, which apparently is obviously less than an acre. So you got a lot of challenges for having the amount of units that you want. I personally would prefer that maybe you did less units, create condos. In fact, I thought it was so well put by Mr. Dufrene. And it has been a problem. I've served on the Hospital Foundation Board. I've been a school board president. I've been involved in a lot of things over the years. And one thing we've always had challenges with is bringing professionals to the community who can find a place to live, put their kids in school, settle down, and become an integral part of our community, not somebody who just makes their money here and leaves. So, I've dealt with this many times in conversations over the years. So I would hope that safety would be a first priority. I would like to see quality be right up there, and really to consider the long-range impact. So I guess one question I have is, why don't you make a quality investment in us? And is low income what we deserve? Just food for thought. And you may have seniors who choose to live in those condos. You may have anybody. It may be a doctor coming to the community. It may be a school teacher, maybe somebody in the mining industry. I would love nothing more than to see somebody, anybody, I would love nothing more than to see somebody take on that school, put in a quality investment, and think about the bigger, longer picture quality vision for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bernstein. Does anyone have questions for Ms. Bernstein? No, thank you.
So I am not.
Oh, thank you. The next person, Valerie Marascal.
Hola, yo soy Valeria Rosa Bariscal de Conchola. I'm a 4th generation Globe girl. 4. I don't want that here. Not in that space. I'm asking that you take over East Globe, take over something else, just leave this building alone. All my other questions and comments have basically been addressed by the fine people here. Thank you very much. I would like to see this property go to something that attracts tourism and art and food and brings people through and makes people pumped up about Globe. I'd like to see that. For the past couple years, me and a crew of people have been fantasizing and sketching out, and just last week we heard about y'all coming in to buy it up at this nice, sweet price and do your thing. What I really need for you to do, though, today is stop using, oh, it's like Phoenix, and I've seen it before. Oh, like Maryland. This isn't Phoenix. If we wanted it to be like Phoenix, we would move to Phoenix. Okay, my grandma, I'm from Buena Vista Street, 6-Shooter Canyon.
Can you speak into the mic, please, so
Sure. I grew up across the street from the community center on a cutout piece of hill above Fernando Navarro. My whole family comes from Buena Vista Street, Haskins Terrace. None of my ancestors and my future generations are going to be down for this. This isn't the kind of thing where I'm like, yeah, let's move back to Globe. This doesn't draw us back to Globe. And I think, they've all made their points about the parking. Are you seriously going to ask people to give up their cars? They're not going to. And these people have more than one car. Come on, and you're at the high school. Why don't you go bother the high school? Go ask the high school to give up their building and their parking. This is not, leave it alone. Find a different spot to do this. It's an inappropriate spot. And your schematics that you're proposing, I'm sorry, but it doesn't fit here. You're going to change the outside of that beautiful building. I know it's trash and the asbestos problems, all the problems it has. You're going to dump $20 million into this property, but you're like, oh, we don't know what to do about parking? That's so bizarre.
Ma'am, please direct your questions to the chair and the commission. This is who you're here to speak to.
Okay. I oppose this project. I would like to see them move it to a different spot in Globe. I think if you're really concerned about senior housing and low-income housing, we can do better by that demographic in this town, and it's not in this building. And I'd really like to see y'all protect the Nerdburger business and protect her apartments. And I don't want to see any senior citizen getting rolled as they're walking to Safeway and coming back with their groceries. My great-grandma Manuela lived on Buena Vista Street, not far from Safeway. We had to pick her up and take her to Safeway. You think senior citizens want to walk in, like, you know, anything that's above 75 degrees to Safeway with their groceries and then haul it back up 3 flights in the elevator and wait for the elevator to come back down 3 flights of stairs? That's ridiculous. That is so, like, out of touch thinking. I can't even. They're not going to walk, just going to walk on down the senior citizen center. You're thinking as a very abled person, very ableist point of view. And that's not okay. Not okay at all. One elevator, and you think one human being is going to live in each one of those apartments? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. This is all greed. This isn't about our community. This is about your company.
Thank you, Ms. Mariscal. Do we have any?
Mariscal.
I'm sorry.
Maybe
do
Eric
we have
Mariscal is my uncle. He is vice mayor of this town for a little while. My last name is Mariscal.
I'm so sorry. Do we have any questions for Ms. Mariscal? Last person we have is Ed Kuniman. Sorry, I'm not really good at pronouncing these names.
My name is Ed Kuhneman. I live at 259 Southeast Street. I go to the church. It's 509 East Maple across from the high school. So does two of the people that were going to speak, but they went to church. This was a long meeting. And you did very well with my name, but I'm surprised that I didn't have you in the 5th grade. And most of those people know how to say that really well. I am a senior. I have atrophied muscles in both legs. I do not walk well. The Blue Book value on my car is $500. It runs fine. I go to the Valley. I go to Fry's and Walmart in it. And when I moved here from a trailer park south of town, I found a little old house at a reasonable price, and I fixed it up until I ran out of money. And I'm not giving that up to move into a room on each side of the hall. I'm gonna move into a room. I've got a house where I am, it's fixed up, okay? It's got solar panels on top of it. A room on each side of the hall, that's the old jail downtown, okay? And I wouldn't want to move into there. We have had 3 buildings such as have been described in downtown Globe. One was the Dominion Hotel. It was beautifully architected. It was Teddy Roosevelt stayed there. It was a historic spot, and people lived there in the different rooms. And most of them didn't have cars because they didn't have a whole lot of money. And so they lived there, and it was housing for people who didn't have a lot of money. The others were the Pioneer and the Tonto hotels. And before we burned most of them down, which we seem to do here, it was empty. They were empty. It didn't fly. It became slummy. It became rough. I could tell you a very funny story about the Tonto Hotel and the people that were living there, but has nothing to do with the issue here, which is similar buildings have not worked in Globe, and they were closer downtown. They were closer. The Dominion was closer to Safeway. It was closer to CVS. It was right downtown. And the people that stayed there weren't the little old people that wanted to walk to this. No. It was the people that just got out of the joint and didn't have a lot of money and stuff, or the people living on. So see, it was a rough bunch, okay? And many of them are my dear friends, so I won't say too much about them. It was nice that they had a place for, people that didn't have much money to go. And we have senior and limited income housing And we got a unit over by Wendy's, and we got one out the canyon, and they're beautiful. Have you been inside those places? Is it one room that opens onto a hall? Does it look like the prison downtown? No. These are gracious places with parking all over the place. Why here? Well, I said, well, I like the idea of restoring a historic place, Hill Street School, which is dear to many people's hearts because they went there. Now, it is ugly. I'm sorry, folks. It is falling apart because the owner leaves the windows open and everything and lets the rain come in, and we won't give it up until... Anyway, it would be wonderful if they came in here and fixed that up. I could even see 35 units. Where would you park the cars? Where the second building goes? Why would you put 2 buildings in 0.78 acres? Why? To exploit the situation and make as much money as possible, obviously. Go across the street. Check the houses over there. Most of them are empty. There's room in other places, okay? There are many empty houses all over globe. We have a housing shortage, and yet there's empty houses. But somebody who's living in Mesa said, that's Nana's house. And so lets it fall all over the place and fall into blight because there needs to be some legal taxing issues that unoccupied houses are taxed at a different rate. Then that's my solution for the whole thing. Because I got a little old house. It's 100 years old. But it's sided, it's painted, it has a roof on it. I did that with a teacher's salary. And there are people in this community that are extremely clever at fixing up old houses. If they could get people to release it from their claws, let it go. But you're not going to get me to give up my house up on top of the hill above Safeway to come and live in a room on one side of a hall so I can walk down to Safeway. No. I got a car. It runs. It's a nice looking car. It's not blightful. I'm sorry. It's just old. Like me, okay? It's just old, but it's functional, okay? And why would you, across the street from this, there are maybe 14 units tops. And they're not spread out. They're not full of parking areas. They're kind of squished together. And 14 units across the street, and here, 70. No. That's the way the Dominion was. And it emptied out. It didn't fly. That's the way the Pioneer was. It emptied out. It didn't fly. Why build a future slum? It doesn't make sense. You say, we're going to encourage people to use mass transit. This is globe, for crying out. What are you trying to do? We're going to use the light rail or something? No. We can use our cars. We get around fine, okay? If there's a place to park them, like if you get rid of that second building and fix up the Hill Street School, would be very nice. I'm sure they won't like that. I like the idea of the landscaping. That's not, the place needs to be landscaped. We're too used to it, guys. It's ugly. And I wish somebody would fix up that school. But putting another building in, why do those ordinances exist? Setback ordinances, parking ordinances, so that you won't overcrowd an area. Why are we going to set those ordinances aside so that a company can overcrowd this area right next to the egress, Maple Street and Hill Street, from the high school, the church, and everything up, because you can't get out on the other end of the next 2 streets. You have to go down to that. And why put that kind of traffic? Now, I would be for restoring Hill Street School and putting in green and parking where the second building is going to be. But there's not room enough to put 70 dwellings in that little bitty triangle. And trying to put it there is just a really bad idea, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuniman. Any questions for Mr. Kuniman? All right, thank you. That is the last of our Oh, okay, yes, sir.
State your name.
Yes.
Please approach the microphone and speak into it, yes, and state your name.
Good evening. My name's Terry Moya. I own property there on Sutherland Street, and all of the property through there there's on-street parking for the residences, and there's no off-street parking for the houses that are constructed down along that street. And again, all the other problems that have been hashed over on Devereaux Street and on Maple Street and what have you. And also going further down on Hill Street, a lot of people, I'm surprised that the business owner from the Miles Mortuary or the Lamont Mortuary isn't here to speak of the traffic that occurs at the mortuary when you have the traffic lined up on both sides of the streets up and down Hill Street. And there's not room for parking for Nerdburger or anybody else. You have a line of traffic that are paying last respects to their loved ones. I think we've all driven through there and seen that situation. We need to turn around and make some professional housing in the community. I'm working on a piece of property that hopefully will be able to attract some professionals in the area. All of the housing in that area years ago was set up for the teachers. They were beautiful houses at one time. They were able to turn around and not even have a car, walk right across the street to the school and walk up a block and a half up to the high school. And it worked beautiful. It's just those three streets with Maple, Sutherland, and Hill Street, and trying to throw all of the additional traffic onto it is just a recipe for a disaster, really. There's no way that with the existing roadways and what have you, and the existing buildings that are on these roadways, that those roads can be expanded by blocking the side of the drivers. There's no right turn that could be made off of Hill Street onto Maple Street, and coming out of Maple Street onto Hill Street with the traffic coming off the stop sign at Sutherland, and your traffic at Maple, and the walking traffic coming across. It's just a bit too much for a congested area there. It was the schools, and the school built around the existing housing. That's why those houses that are still there, sitting across the street from the high school, those people are still there. I can remember I envied the people that lived there, the kids that lived there. They got out, walked down the stairs of the high school, walked across the street, and got to sit down and eat lunch, and I had to walk 15 minutes to get mine. But these people are second and third generations now that are living in the same houses that their parents had and what have you, and they're not going to sell. They've been approached several times, and they're still there today. Don't see any way of making any additional room. The schools wanted it for building their administration buildings and what have you, and decided to purchase the house right next to the high school for that purpose. And they moved the business office over to the old junior high school that was built there, I guess more than 20 years ago now. But it's, that's the business office and the maintenance yard for the school district itself, which throws additional traffic on there. And then you go down further north on Devereaux Street, and all of that housing is rental property. It's only parking on one side of the street. There'll be the school personnel with the business office and the maintenance personnel take up parking on the east side of Devereaux Street, going further north. So I just don't see the project as it is designed taking off and actually benefiting the community and asking the high school students to make, you know, the concessions and what have you, and just, you know, they've worked hard to obtain their student parking lot. I think the student body very much appreciates that, and this would really encroach on it. When I went to school at Hill Street School, that was a gas station. There was a motel right next to it on that property there, and it later became a Sonic drive-in and a little bit. But we had an access out from the school itself onto the highway. The bypass was not there at that time, and that's created the congestion, and you know, with the traffic signals. I believe one of the people addressed the issue of the traffic study plan. Is going to need to be some road widening? Are the people going to be willing to sell off some of their property for?
Just having it taken over, not they don't sell it. The city just takes it.
It's whether it's done through adverse possession or what have you, but it's just, you know, I don't think these people are willing to make those concessions on that. And as much as I'd like to see the school developed into something, I think with the way that the building is built, from what I remember from going up and down those stairs, even the young athletes have trouble climbing those stairs. They're pretty steep and pretty tall stairs. And I don't know if that's going to be feasible to do that. I mean, we might have to go the route of, if we can't come up with some idea like this, to really consider demolishing the building and then placing something else on it or what have you. But I'm not entirely opposed to the project. The idea is, I think it's wonderful that people would want to come to the community and try to do something that would be better. But as a gateway project, I think we need to have something a little better than low-income housing.
Thank you, Mr. Moya. Are there any questions for Mr. Moya? Okay, thank you, Mr. Moya. We did receive one opposition through email. Dang it. I won't read it all because most of it has already been addressed, but also the concern for the students and their driving, the units, and the lack of traffic. And okay, so that was pretty much the concerns that was brought in, and that was also done through Stacy? No, Oak Realty. No? Oh.
The local Globe Miami Board of Realtors.
Globe Miami Board of Realtors. Okay, thank you. All right, we've heard everything.
Madam Chair, I've got comments.
Okay, almost everything. We've heard almost everything.
Thank you. Okay, I have a comment from Pam Trobaugh, and Pam says, this sounds like a beautiful project and is definitely needed. However, I am concerned about the on-street parking. I witnessed an accident just last week that was partially due to cars parked across the street. Due to cars parked across from Nerdburger on Hill Street. A vehicle was making a left-hand turn from Maple onto Hill Street. She could not see the oncoming traffic because her view was limited. She was rear-ended. I fear more cars parked along the streets will make this more of a nightmare, especially with the traffic from the high school. I hope this will really be looked at by those who are planning this project. And I have one more. This comment's from Larry Alderman. If I may respectfully address the commission, I just want to note that you can never please everyone. With that being said, I would encourage you all to consider the older folks who can no longer keep their property up because of our physical limitations and our financial limitations. With the increased cost of living and other demands on our income, just the thought of being able to sell, rent, or lease our homes for additional income as well as a place to live here in our community with the addition of a place to house our aging citizens. Just think of the possibilities we have of having folks to be able to work here and live here with availability of new, older homes on the market for sale or lease, rather than living in the valley and commuting up here to work and then commuting home. The older citizens would win, the transient workers would win, and the city would win with dollars staying in our community. As you all said about the new plans of the aquatic center, this is a win-win situation. I know from my time on council, we had to look at the wishes of the entire community and the needs of the city's overall health and vibrancy as a whole. I might add that the building that is being considered here has been a blight on our community for some time, with no one to keep it up and standing neglected for years. I pray you all would look at the big picture and try to balance the needs of all of our citizens and the needs of the city as a whole. Blessings, former City Councilman Larry Alderman. I do have a text. Okay, I don't know who this text is from. They didn't provide their name, but they said they don't think there's enough street for parking. And did you inquire at the Hill Street? I'm assuming the mall, she might sell out. A comment. Here is another comment. I have a question. The Globe High School gets bomb threats often. It's on the same block as the high school. How will you vacate the old junior high building? I'm assuming they mean the Hill Streets. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have heard everything. We need to take this to a vote. May I,
Madam Chair, you need to.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Oh, yes, please do. Please do, yes.
Yep. And Madam Chair, we need to close the public hearing if we're done with the public hearing too.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure.
Strike your gavel, public hearing's closed, and then we
And
can
then
get
he
into
can make his
Q&A.
comment?
He can do that. He's applicant, so he can speak.
Okay. We're going to close public hearing now, and we'll hear a comment here from Mr. Clocky.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to be able to address everything that folks talked about, but I do want to at least touch on a few things and hopefully clarify a few things if there was any kind of confusion. First off, we are your neighbors. This is a kind of project, as Sally said earlier, our company designs, constructs, and manages the building. The way that the financing structure works on there, we are here for at least 15 years, likely 30. That's how the financing structure works. We're not going anywhere. We aren't flipping developers that they come and flip the property and sell it and so forth. We're going to be here. We're going to be your neighbors, which means if there's an issue, we're not gone. We're here. And you can go directly to our property management and say, hey, I was wondering, this sort of thing happened or that sort of thing happened. That can be addressed if there are concerns that come up. Obviously, the parking is a huge issue. What I will say is this building has sat here for 16 years with lots and lots of parking. Lots of parking, folks. And it hasn't been bought. And I'm not saying that there aren't other users out there, but we do this for a living. And I would ask, there are a lot of comments about slum housing. Look at the interiors of what we build. You couldn't tell me if this was market rate or low-income housing. You couldn't tell me the difference. People walk by the thing that's about 500 feet from my house that I talked about. They have absolutely no idea it is affordable housing. Because the key to good affordable housing is good design and good maintenance. Then it's no different than any other kind of apartment complex. The reason some of those apartments that you talked about, sir, are probably pretty bad is because the maintenance probably wasn't there and the care for it. We are held by law to hold this property for at least 15 years. If we don't follow those rules, we lose all the funding that went into that. So we go belly up. We are actually much more of a stable developer than most developers, because most developers will do the project and sell it and leave. We're here for the long haul. One of the comments was about people looking into my houses from 3 stories. I guess I would just say, well, there used to be a couple hundred kids in there. Who's more likely to be looking into houses, 60, 65-year-olds or kids going to school? I don't think we, by nature, peer into people's houses, and I really wouldn't worry about that too much. The other thing that came up was that about the safety with the kids, and I totally understand that. I'm on my 3rd driver. I have a 17-year-old. I have 2 kids that are older than that. I've gone through this. I know how this works. What I would say is the kids aren't just driving out of the high school parking lot. They're driving miles and miles and miles all around this town. So if we're worried about how they're driving out of the school parking lot, they're behaving in the same way everywhere else in the town. And so I think that's a bigger issue. I understand the concern, but it's not like they change their driving habits after they leave the school parking lot. Couple other things that popped up. The building has been vacant for 16 years. 16 years. And we really want to invest in this building. You say that, we're not from here and we're just going to run. We're not. We're going to put this money in and we're going to be here for the long, long haul. And that's the rules of this program. From a parking perspective, everyone's talking about parking in front of their house or their apartment or their business. I'm assuming people want more businesses in this town. We talked about empty places that we want to fill with businesses and with people. They're going to have cars too, and they're going to want to park in front of their building too. So it's always this struggle, it's a juggle, quite honestly, between trying to fill all the places and the concerns about parking. And I would say that, whatever business you have here, they're going to want to park in front of it on the street as well. And so if we want to fill the buildings that people talked about that are vacant, there's going to be more cars on the street. And that's just part of it. And I understand you're saying that we have a parking lot, we could use that. What I can tell you is the cost to rehab that building, because it has sat for so long, and because we want to do it right, one of those windows, I guarantee you, we haven't priced out every single thing for it yet, one of those windows, if we replace it with in-kind historic windows, will probably be $3,000 to $4,000 a piece. There's 150 windows in that building, 150, give or take. I gave up counting it at 142. We want to invest in this community. We're committed to the long haul. We're committed to making this a stronger community. We're committed to making sure that the residents that are there, who already live here in town, stay your neighbors. These are your neighbors, folks. These are not people from somewhere else. They're your grandparents, your parents, and so forth. I think from a selling the house, we're not looking for people to sell their homes. If they want to, great. We're not here telling people to sell their houses so you can come and live in our apartment. What we have is years and years of experience that people actually want to live in the stuff that we build. We typically fill up one of these apartment complexes in 2 to 3 months. That's way faster than any market rate developer. Way faster. We filled one last week that we just finished literally in 30 days. Different town, different demographics, and so forth. I'm not saying that will happen here. That housing report and the demographics of Globe point to the same experience. There's true need here, and you have neighbors that have needs. And so it's so weird because I've always been sort of on the side of Dana on a commission or something like that, so I'm always hearing the developer talk, and you're like, oh, they're so full of it. This is actually the real deal. And I would invite, if anyone's down towards the valley, we'd love to give you a tour of any of the places that we have there. Some of the senior housing, the one right near my house, I'd love to tour people around. We would be happy to do that. And we're also happy to keep working with Dana and with staff to see if there are ways to accommodate some of the concerns that are here. They're totally legitimate concerns. And making changes is really hard, and I get that. But I've seen this enough and in enough towns and communities that I know that this is gonna be something really good for your town. And I'd ask you to consider the words of that last email that came through about there's true need. We talk about folks like they don't exist here in town, but they do. These are your neighbors, and the numbers tell the story. So, sorry if I go on too long.
Oh,
I'm
no,
very
thank
passionate
you.
about
Thank you very much.
Yeah, these are, so all these, in the new construction and in the old school, those are full-fledged apartments. Those aren't like single-room occupancy rooms. And that's maybe the hotels that you were talking about, sir, that were downtown. Maybe they were SROs, they call them, single-room occupancies. These are full-fledged apartments. And there is rules that the state has of how you have to build these and amenities that you have to have. So this isn't, we're not just gonna slap up something and run away. We're here, like I said, for the long haul to build something really special. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Clocky. Now we will,
Madam Chair, if I could respond to the couple of the safety comments that
Yes, sir.
that were made. I just want to make you aware that the city staff, including our city engineer who reviews traffic design and our traffic situations, as well as the fire department and police have all reviewed the proposal as well. We do know, we looked at traffic incidents in and around this area, and it's no different than any other intersection in the community in these local off Main Street roads. So we haven't seen any noticeable increase or don't expect to see anything. But obviously, whenever you grow, whenever you add people, there is additional traffic, and we need to be mindful. The general plan also notes from 2015 that we're lacking in all types of housing. We've known that for a while. So obviously this is just one segment that they're proposing to approach. And I want to make sure that's clear. Obviously it's not for everyone. And keep in mind that the future also for that area, when the city rezoned a lot of that land that used to be single-family residential, there was an understanding that, okay, based on proximity to Globe and the downtown, there's an interest to have commercial development on Hill Street, hence the zoning for commercial. So just want to make sure you're keeping in mind that the long-range picture, the big picture of what's anticipated in the future and what actions have been taken in the past to get closer towards that future. But obviously C3 zoning is a pretty intense zoning district for this property, as well as the property to the east and north west and west of the property. Okay, just want to make.
Thank you,
points.
Dana. Dana, could you just, you mentioned earlier that there was 53 dwellings per acre, and we're now talking about 70 dwellings per 0.79 acres. How is that going to work through our ordinances?
So our ordinance, the way it's written, and it's only in the multifamily in our R2 zoning district.
Okay.
It's the only district that talks about a density.
Uh-huh.
And what it explains is that one-bedroom homes need to be a minimum of like 1,200 or 1,000 square feet. Two-bedroom homes, 2,000, and 1,500, and I think three-bedroom homes, rooms or units be like 20 or 1,700 or 2,700. Anyway, it's an old, antiquated way that they calculated zoning, and I believe the intent was to create literally minimum floor areas for new for apartments and buildings uses. So anyway, it's just not a good formula. Generally, we like to, your typical 3-story walk-up apartment would be 25 units to the acre. So this is looking at 53. So if that puts into perspective, because it's in the C3 zoning district and it's near that downtown, the density is really up to ultimately the council, but up to the commission to consider. We haven't seen density. Our ordinance isn't really designed for, though the C3 zoning district has a 100-foot maximum building height. I think that was intended for towers, possibly like aerial communication towers or something. But yeah, other than that, it doesn't really limit a density in commercial.
Okay. Okay, but we do kind of have a little bit of a standard. Like you said, typically you see 23 units per acre. You said 53 units per acre is what our ordinance is. We're having 70 units per 0.79 acres. I'm just concerned about that, but if that works with our ordinance, then.
It does. So the R2 district would be, if you came in and proposed a project in R2, I think you'd be capped at 25 dwelling units to the acre based on those calculations I told you. If you just say, we're taking that on an average of out of the lot size, available developable area. So, yeah, if that helps. But because this isn't in R2, that's where,
Okay.
And we're looking at it as more of a downtown type of urban facility.
Okay.
You would look
Thank you, Dana, for that. We need to go ahead and take this to a proposal. Does anyone want to make a proposal?
Or a motion?
Or a motion, sorry, a motion.
I actually just wanted to make something crystal clear. So the purpose of this agenda is for the rezoning of the parcel, right? It's not that we're actually approving of the development plan that has been presented. Is that correct?
Correct. The narrative provides general framework. So ideally, we're in the ballpark, but detailed building plans and all the other details need to come in, and you will see the site plan.
So you're saying we're not voting for what we're seeing here, we're just voting to change the zone?
And that would be the concept that this is based off of now as we get, ultimately a site plan needs to come before you.
So, just to put it very pragmatically, it's possible something can change as far as the proposed plan.
Depending on what changes, like if they decided to put a bunch of parking on site, they'd probably need to do an amendment to the plan, or, well, we'd have to, just depends what changes are necessary. But what we don't know right now is where the actual lot lines fall relative to the buildings and the public improvements, existing public improvements, things like that. So we'll start to look at the detail. That's it. It's residential, setback reduction, and no parking.
And no parking.
Those are the
That's
three
what
items.
you're approving.
Hey, please speak to the mic if you need to get.
Public hearing is closed, I'm sorry.
Fully asked the question and no one answered
Appointed
it.
for good reason.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. I think to be very clear to you, I've seen this happen before. When you vote today to approve for this to move forward, you're not only voting for the change, you're also saying that what you see is what you like. Okay? So, and it might change, it probably won't change. Okay? Can someone make a motion? Anyone?
Could I clarify one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
I know Dylan wanted it crystal clear. I'm just about as slow as molasses, so I'm gonna clarify it a little bit more. What I'm hearing that I wanna understand is if we motion to approve this, and if we vote to approve this, we're basically accepting this with, and I'm gonna raise that biggest issue, the no on-site parking, which means that we can't go back and tell the developers, look, we do want you to look at one building with parking, or this or that. that would be kind of against what we're voting for right now. So if we are very concerned about parking and safety and other issues, then we would have to vote against this and see another proposal. Is that kind of, because we're new, I want to make sure that we understand this.
So you have three options in making a motion. I'm not hearing you. Three options. You can motion to approve, you can motion to deny, or you can motion to approve with amendments. And so, for
We
instance,
would have
if
to state very clearly what those amendments are right now.
exactly, to an extent, so for instance, motion to approve with the condition that the applicant provide some commensurate amount of parking or designate shared parking at another location prior to receiving permits to build, or something like that. If parking's your only hang-up, and I think it generally sounds like that is the major thing, but something like that could allow you to recommend council that condition, and then they would review that, but ultimately, council would consider this just like you are tonight and make the final decision. You're making the recommendation to council.
Yes.
So we could approve of it with the condition that the parking issue be reviewed later on? Is that?
Yeah, and I would want to be just specific that, that the applicant provide the designated minimum amount of parking. So if you say, well, okay, Devereaux could work, or let's say, what would this property rightfully be allowed to have on their frontage for on-street parking? Oh, they've got all this frontage. The neighbors want a lot of shared parking because of it's so busy over there that, well, let's just say you need to come up with a portion of secured shared parking at another location. So, instead of saying, hey, you gotta go find all 32 to 35 of your parking spaces elsewhere and show us an agreement and a contract how you're gonna park that, say, well, you do have some off-street parking, you should have some right to utilize that. So let's cut that in half and say applicants to go find 15 to 20 or 17 secured off-street parking spaces prior to receiving a permit to build. So, or, does that help? It's giving you a way to allow the applicant to look for shared parking opportunities. And our code does allow for you to go find a parking lot someplace else and utilize it. It just wants it within a certain distance, and we of the property that serves like 400 feet.
I think, Madam Chair, I feel like we've heard quite a few concerns, parking being the most vocal and pronounced. Is there a method where we can talk and see if we are comfortable with this? Is that what executive session is for, or no? We all have to just make this decision now?
Yeah, e-session would be more for legal direction,
Okay.
Information, and we
Okay,
try not
that's
to
fine.
do
This-
that
I
with
just wanted
P&Z,
to
but
understand.
you can have that discussion here. the idea.
So you can vote to approve, you can vote to deny, or you can say we can approve with the amendment of 0.72 on-site parking spots, which is the average, or half of, 0.72 parking on-site spots.
The required 0.5.
Okay, 0.55 on-site parking spots. So you can make all sorts of amendments to approve it, or you can just say, I don't feel comfortable not approving it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Madam Chair.
I would like to ask, does that conditional approval have to be unanimous by all of us?
No, just a majority.
Just the majority. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion with the stipulation to provide an additional 10 off-street parking spaces within an appropriate distance of our pad here. Is that an appropriate motion?
So you want to make a motion to approve this change as it stands with an additional 10 off-site parking spots. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay, will somebody second that motion?
I second.
Okay, we have a second to the motion. Now we're going to go and take it to a vote to approve what you see here with 10 additional off-site parking locations.
I approve.
I approve with the additional parking.
I deny it.
I deny.
Okay? It's been unanimous that this, oh, Justin, I'm sorry. Justin, did you approve? I'm sorry.
Approved. Sorry, my microphone was having
Okay,
issues.
so we are at a split. Dang it.
And that fails. And it would fail in a tie.
Okay. So then we're going to close the vote, and this project sorry, hold on.
Motion to.
We're going to make another.
Can we table it? I mean,
You don't want to see the
you want to just get it done, right?
That's correct. If someone wishes to make an additional motion. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Since that motion failed, if somebody wants to make another motion. they're
Okay.
welcome to do that.
Yes. Does anyone want to make another motion?
I do.
Can we motion to table it so that we have an opportunity to talk? I mean, this is like just thrown at us and all of a sudden now we have to make this decision. You know, I appreciate everyone's concerns, but I also can see reasons why I would like to see this in some form passed. So for everyone to deny it just on parking, I assume is the main reason for it, when it feels like we should talk about it a little bit. I don't know. I don't know what we can do.
So we won't be able to table this because we're just making a recommendation. This suggestion will go to the next level. We're not really making the final choice here. We're making a recommendation to the next level. Is that correct, Dana?
Correct.
So there's nothing to table. We just need to, from what we've heard, do we feel it's a good idea to recommend this to move forward or recommend this to not move forward? But it won't determine if it does or if it doesn't. We're just making the recommendation. Do we want to make another motion here?
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair. I would like to motion to not recommend proceeding forward with rezoning case Z2105 as written, as outlined in this case.
Is there a second to this motion?
I second that motion.
All right, let's take this to a vote.
No.
Okay.
Um,
Motion to deny, I'm sorry.
Motion to deny.
And you vote against it?
I vote against it as is.
Vote against it as is, and I vote against it.
I vote against it as is.
And Justin, I'm sorry, what was your vote?
Sorry, so we should be voting against the motion itself, correct? Not.
We're voting to determine whether this will not move forward as is.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
You're voting to approve, deny, or
Approve, okay,
So
we're-
you're voting to deny.
I think that's what it's.
We're voting to deny this project.
All
yes.
those in favor of voting to deny? We've got five here.
Or she's voting
I'm sorry
for.
about that.
Because she
Sorry.
was saying she wanted to deny it, and I'm
Yeah.
saying no. I
No,
don't-
she wants to go for it. So we have 4 denies. And Justin, what is yours, to deny or approve it?
It'd be to approve it.
Okay, well,
So the motion passes. to
motion
deny.
passes to
Oh,
deny the
to,
project as
vote.
is.
6-2 vote. I'm sorry, that's 2.
4-2.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good math. All right, thank you
To
very much.
deny as stands. Thank you. And we will close this meeting.
All right, if everybody wants to do
What about the first thing we did deny? We skipped.
real estate, I like it.
Which is the
We'll bang out that one real quick, Madam Chair, if you'd like to, or we can.
presentation and discussion of staff on group homes and short-term rentals.
It's real quick, but some of the public might appreciate this. Madam Chair, Commissioners, we've had a request over the years on occasion of, to have group homes. The various types of group homes within the community, and currently the city does not have a code to address that. The state over in the past decade has become very involved in preempting, I just got out of the meeting, sorry. I just got out of the Zoom meeting to show you my presentation. Let me plug in. Is he? Hey, Paul, can you let me in the meeting again? Sorry. Sorry. There you go. Let's see you get. There you go. All right, now I'll share my screen. Patience. All right. Okay, so back to it. So we're talking about both group homes and short-term rentals, and I'm gonna breeze through them both, lay it out for you, just ask you a question if you're interested, and if you have any specific comment regarding direction of staff to move forward, and then we'll be on our way. So what is a group home? A home that provides various levels of supervision to a number of unrelated individuals, and most of the time they're less than 10 people. State has permitting process through ADHS to allow for the various types of group homes, be it a child with disabilities or a home for people with disabilities, assisted living homes or group homes for people, sober living homes, foster care facilities, halfway houses, and even like a daycare would fall within this too. So how cities typically regulate, and they regulate all those differently, right? There's different, we look at each of those different homes a little bit differently, function differently. We want to put safety and protections in place a little differently on a few of those, right? So over the years, cities have carved out these various different types. For instance, senior living homes, you're allowed to have one up to 6 people. Any of you could do it by right. State adopted legislation that said, we can't restrict people from doing this. So now cities had to hurry up and get together and say, okay, we gotta, and they limited our ability to zone. But what they did allow was, well, we can create distance separations and stuff like that. So that gets us to the kind of the meat of this discussion. How do other cities regulate these various types of homes? Well, you can have specific regulations depending on the type of home, like I mentioned. You can limit the number of residents. You can limit the number of trips to that home during the day or night. Because the whole idea is to not change a residential character of a neighborhood. You can look at parking considerations. Are they providing on-street parking, and what type of services and activities do they have? And like I said, you want to separate those sometimes so you don't have a conglomeration of a bunch of group homes in one neighborhood. Then it becomes the group home neighborhood, parking everywhere, and other issues in residential settings, single-family settings. And then there's a bunch of different types of approvals. So does anybody have any questions or thoughts on group homes and the city moving forward, staff moving forward with developing some language for you to consider as an ordinance amendment down the road?
No, but I do have a question. You're saying that we're just gonna move forward and develop language to get ordinances for the group home?
Right. Something for you to discuss. And
Okay.
negotiate.
Okay, sounds great.
Right. Good. And same with short-term rentals. We got a lot of communities have done different things, including institute a bed tax. Right now, we don't get that from any of the short-term rentals, which are basically the Airbnbs, the VRBOs. Typically less than 30-day stay, and again, state protects them very well. So things that we'll look at are requiring a permit or register, a local contact, because we're aware that some houses have been used for parties and things like that. If there's not an on-site contact for PD to get a hold of to access the property, there are problems there. You can also restrict the types of dwellings, be it campers in backyards, houses, yurts, other creative things people do over time. Number of guests, and as well, again, bed tax, and then have maintenance and management responsibilities. So, if the Planning and Zoning Commission's interested to see some potential language for the city to consider.
Yes.
For short-term rentals. Anybody say no? Very good. All right, excellent. That's it. Well, you know, in the coming months, we'll have something before you.
All right, awesome.
Madam Chair, somebody might want to say something.
Any questions for?
Oh, okay, good. Sorry.
Okay, then we will go ahead and close our meeting. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Second that motion?
No, somebody has to motion it.
Oh, I'm motion too.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Awesome. Can we go ahead and take it to a vote?
I agree.
Aye?
All right.
Aye.
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 Awesome. Thank you. And we are adjourned.